Tonight, we are about to meet the only child in Greek mythology who committed one of the greatest thefts in Olympus, before he was even 1 day old. By sunset, he would fool the god of prophecy, invent an instrument that could melt divine anger, and begin a life spent guiding both heroes and the souls of the dead. But how could a newborn accomplish any of this? The answer begins far from the shining halls of Olympus. Tonight you stand beneath the silent slopes of Mount Cyllene. Moonlight spills across damp stone. The scent of wild thyme drifts through cool mountain air. Hidden inside a forgotten cave, a baby is about to open his eyes, and nothing in Greek mythology will ever move quite the same again. So before we continue tonight's journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these ancient stories together. And if you feel like sharing, leave your location and local time in the comments below. Somewhere in this vast world, someone else is listening beneath the same night sky. The mystery surrounding this child begins with a strange question. How can a god be born already restless? How can an infant reject stillness before he even learns to walk? That question would follow Hermes forever. You stand near the entrance of the cave as his mother Maia labors in darkness. She is not like the loud and radiant queens of Olympus. She prefers shadows, quiet valleys, hidden springs. Some ancient traditions describe her as gentle and withdrawn, almost wary of divine attention. Perhaps that is why Zeus came to her in secrecy under cover of night, when even the palace of Olympus slept. Outside, the stars burn with unusual clarity. Ancient storytellers say omens appeared that night. A meteor crossed the sky like a silver blade. Owls remained silent. Even nocturnal insects stopped their song. Surviving traditions disagree on whether these signs were blessings or warnings. Some priests believed the silence meant wisdom. Others believed it meant disruption. Something new was entering the world. Then the child arrives. No thunder shakes the mountain. No choir of gods descends from heaven. His birth is quiet, almost too quiet. The newborn lies wrapped in cloth, small and warm, his breathing soft. Maia exhales in relief. She expects exhaustion, perhaps peaceful sleep. Instead, the child opens his eyes, not with the dull confusion of ordinary infancy, with attention, with focus, with awareness. Ancient poets linger on this moment because it feels unsettling. The child does not merely look, he observes. His gaze moves over stone walls, torchlight his mother's hands. The cave entrance, the world beyond. He studies everything, as if he has already begun calculating possibilities. Maia senses something unusual. She pulls him closer, pressing him gently against her chest. She whispers protective prayers, old mountain prayers spoken long before Olympus ruled the heavens. She hopes quiet will shape him. But some natures resist containment. Hermes does not cry for long. He listens. That detail matters. Before he becomes messenger, before he becomes trickster, before he becomes guide of souls, Hermes is first a listener. He absorbs patterns, voices, rhythms, openings, weaknesses. Silence teaches him, and yet silence cannot hold him. The hours pass. Dawn begins touching distant ridges with pale gold. Maia, exhausted, drifts towards sleep. Sacred fire crackles beside her. Warm smoke curls upward toward the cave ceiling. The child should rest. He does not. Instead, something astonishing happens. He slips free. Ancient hymns describe this almost casually, which makes it stranger. Hermes, still less than a day old, frees himself from his wrappings. Tiny hands move with impossible coordination. Tiny feet touch cold stone. He stands. The air feels suddenly charged. You watch him balance, unafraid. He should fall. He does not. He takes one step, then another. The first footsteps of Hermes are not uncertain. They are deliberate. Already movement defines him. Already boundaries mean little. Historians of religion often note that Hermes governs thresholds, doorways, roads crossings, transitions. Perhaps this begins here with his first rebellion. Birth itself is a threshold. Cradle is another. Hermes crosses both immediately. He reaches the cave entrance. Morning wind brushes his skin. Cold, sharp, alive. He smiles. That smile matters too. It is playful, yes, but also hungry. Not hunger for food, hunger for experience. The world calls to him. Far below, the mountain valleys awaken. Shepherd fires glow like tiny stars. Goats move across rocky slopes. Rivers reflect dawn. Hermes sees not obstacles, but routes, paths, possibilities. This becomes his defining gift. Where others see walls, Hermes sees passage. Where others see rules, Hermes sees loopholes. Where others see fixed meaning, Hermes sees reinterpretation. Some researchers believe this symbolic role explains why merchants loved him. Trade requires movement, negotiation, flexibility, exchange. Hermes embodies all of it. But that future lies far ahead. For now, he is simply a newborn standing beneath the sky, and already planning. A strange omen appears then. A tortoise slowly crawls near the cave. Such a small creature. Slow, deliberate, ancient. Hermes watches. Most infants would ignore it. Hermes kneels. He studies shell patterns, curves, hollow structure. Ancient poets say he laughed, not cruelly, delighted, as if recognizing opportunity. The contrast is striking. The fastest future god meets one of nature's slowest creatures. Movement meets stillness. Speed meets patience. And from that meeting, destiny quietly stirs. Some traditions say Hermes spoke his first words here. Impossible words for a newborn. Yet myth often reveals truth through impossibility. He is said to have addressed the tortoise like an old friend, praising its shape, wondering what music might live inside its shell. Music. An infant thinking about music, about sound, about transformation. This tells you something essential. Hermes is not merely clever. He is inventive. He does not simply take what exists. He reshapes it. That gift will define his life. It will also make him dangerous, because invention changes power, and power attracts conflict. Far above on Olympus, the gods continue their routines. Apollo guides morning light. Hera watches with suspicion. Athena contemplates strategy. None yet understand what has been born below. Not fully. Zeus may suspect. Perhaps that is why some traditions mention a dream he experienced that same night. In the dream, roads spread across earth like shining threads. At every crossroad stood a laughing child. Every traveller stopped. Every god listened. Every secret moved. Zeus woke uneasy. Dream interpreters later argued over its meaning. Was the child destined to serve Olympus or disrupt it? No one could say. Even fate seemed amused. Back in the cave, Maya wakes. For one terrifying heartbeat, she sees empty cloth. Her child is gone. Fear floods her. Then she spots him, standing near the entrance, watching the world. Not crying, not helpless, watching. Her fear softens into awe, and perhaps into something else. Concern, because mothers often recognize truths before anyone else. Maya understands what others will only slowly learn. This child will never stay where he is placed. No wall will keep him. No order will fully contain him. No command will remain unquestioned. He belongs to motion, to exchange, to crossings, to the spaces between certainty. And somewhere deep inside, Hermes already knows. Still, one question remains unresolved. What kind of god is born craving movement more than power? That answer will begin revealing itself before this first day ends. Because before night returns, Hermes will commit his first theft, and Olympus will never be the same. Morning climbs higher over the slopes of Mount Selene, and sunlight begins warming the stone outside Maya's cave. The scent of pine resin thickens in the air. Cicadas awaken. Distant goat bells echo through the valley. Everything in nature seems to settle into rhythm. Everything that is except the child inside the cave. Hermes has returned to his cradle, but not to sleep. He lies still only in appearance. Behind those bright eyes, thought is already moving faster than wind. He has seen the world beyond the cave. He has felt open-air, cold stone distance. Now another force awakens inside him. Desire. Not desire for comfort. Not desire for affection. Something stranger. Possession through cleverness. Discovery through risk. He wants to test what happens when limits are ignored. That impulse would define him for eternity. Some gods seek dominion. Some seek worship, some seek love or vengeance. Hermes seeks movement, especially movement of things that were not supposed to move. Objects, words, secrets, boundaries, ownership itself. You begin to understand why the Greeks found him fascinating. He represents a truth many feared to admit. Civilization depends on rules, yet progress often begins with someone willing to bend them. Before long, Hermes slips free again. No hesitation, no sound. His feet touch stone as lightly as falling ash. Maya sleeps unaware. The sacred fire burns low. Shadows cling to the cave walls. Hermes steps past them and enters daylight once more. Today he walks farther, much farther. The mountain path descends through olive groves and scrub grass. Wind brushes his skin. Dust clings to his feet. Birds scatter as he passes. Though still an infant by age, he moves with uncanny coordination. Each step carries intent. Then he sees them. Cattle, a magnificent herd grazing in a valley pasture. They belong to Apollo. That matters more than it first appears. Apollo is everything Hermes is not, or so it seems. Apollo is order radiance, harmony precision. He embodies law clarity, prophecy music, refined into perfection. Hermes embodies improvisation, ambiguity, invention disruption. If Apollo shines like noon sunlight, Hermes flickers like moving firelight. Their rivalry begins before they truly know each other. Perhaps destiny intended that. Hermes studies the herd. Strong bodies, golden hides, heavy hooves pressing earth, valuable, protected, untouchable. Naturally, Hermes becomes interested. Ancient hymns tell this story with delight because it reveals something essential. Hermes does not steal out of hunger. He steals because theft itself becomes a puzzle. Can the impossible be done? Can something precious vanish without explanation? The question excites him. He smiles. Then he begins. But Hermes understands something profound even now. Stealing is easy. Escaping consequences is art. So he invents a strategy. He turns the cattle around, backward. Each animal is forced to walk in reverse. It is absurd. It is brilliant. Anyone tracking hoofprints will believe the herd walked into the pasture rather than out of it. This small detail reveals the true nature of Hermes' genius. He does not merely act. He thinks from another mind's perspective. He predicts interpretation. He manipulates narrative. Long before language defines him, Hermes understands story. Who controls interpretation controls truth. Slowly, carefully, he drives the cattle across rough terrain. Dust rises around their hooves. Sunlight burns hotter. The journey is difficult, but Hermes remains relentless. Some versions say he also crafted sandals from branches to hide his own footprints. Historians continue debating whether this detail emerged later, but symbolically it matters. Hermes hides movement itself. Even his tracks become uncertain. By midday, the theft is complete. Apollo's sacred cattle are gone. The valley feels wrong, empty, still. Far away, Apollo senses disturbance. Not through sight, through instinct. Sacred ownership has been violated. His anger rises immediately. This is not ordinary theft. These cattle symbolize divine wealth and prestige. To steal from Apollo is to challenge order itself. And somewhere Hermes knows that. That may be the most unsettling part. He chooses not a random victim. He chooses Apollo. Why? Ancient interpreters offered many answers. Some believed Hermes instinctively sought the strongest rival to test himself. Others thought he unconsciously challenged solar certainty with clever ambiguity. Another interpretation survives that Hermes simply wanted to be noticed. That possibility feels strangely human. Even gods crave recognition, especially young ones. Back near the cattle's new hiding place, Hermes pauses. His breathing remains calm. No fear, no regret, only thought. Then something unexpected happens. He notices the tortoise again, or perhaps another like it, slow, silent, shell gleaming softly under sun. Most thieves would focus on concealment. Hermes becomes curious. Again, he kneels. His fingers trace the shell. Curves, resonance, hollow possibility. Then inspiration strikes, not gradually, instantly. This moment is crucial because it shows the deepest truth of Hermes. Trickery alone does not define him. Tricksters exist in many mythologies. What makes Hermes unique is creative transformation. He sees potential where others see ordinary form. He takes the shell and begins crafting. Strings, frame, tension, sound chamber. His hands move with impossible intuition. Ancient worshippers regarded this as sacred symbolism. Hermes creates culture from nature. He turns silence into sound. He converts death into music. The shell becomes instrument. At last, he plucks a string. A note vibrates. Clear, beautiful, unexpectedly beautiful. The air itself seems to pause. Wind softens. Birdsong stills. Even the cattle quiet. Music is born. The first lyre sings, and Hermes listens. That sound changes everything, because now he understands something greater than deception. Charm can achieve what force cannot. Persuasion can alter anger. Beauty can reshape consequence. This insight will guide him for ages. Not every conflict needs escape. Some can be transformed. Meanwhile, Apollo searches. His fury grows. Golden light intensifies around him. Shepherds lower their eyes. Animals grow restless. The sun god follows signs, tracks whispers. But the tracks lie. Backward hoofprints mislead. Paths contradict themselves. Evidence refuses logic. Apollo becomes frustrated. That frustration matters. Order struggles when confronted with deliberate ambiguity. This becomes one of Hermes' enduring powers. He destabilizes certainty, not to destroy truth, to reveal how fragile certainty really is. By evening, Hermes returns to the cave. The sky glows amber. Cloud edges burn red. Smoke from distant homes rises into dusk. Hermes slips back into his cradle. Wrapped again. Still again. Perfectly innocent. Maya wakes to find her child exactly where she left him. Or so it seems. She notices something unusual. A smell. Dust. Grass. Sun-warmed earth. Not cave air. Her expression changes. She understands, at least partly. Where have you been? Some versions say she whispers. Hermes says nothing, but his eyes gleam. Mischief, satisfaction, pride, and perhaps anticipation, because he knows what comes next. Apollo will not accept humiliation. Confrontation is inevitable. Already divine anger moves across the mountains like gathering thunder. The first theft has done more than steal cattle. It has announced a new force to Olympus. A god who bends rules. A god who rewrites evidence. A god who turns crime into art. Yet one mystery remains. When Apollo arrives, and he will, how can a newborn defend himself against one of Olympus's most powerful gods? Hermes already has an answer. It waits in the strings of a newly born instrument. And before this conflict ends, music itself will change destiny. Night returns to the mountains of Mount Selene with slow cooling breath. The last orange light fades behind distant ridges. Stars emerge one by one, bright and sharp in the dark Arcadian sky. Inside Maya's cave, sacred fire flickers against stone, casting restless shadows that seem almost alive. In the cradle lies Hermes, wrapped again like an ordinary infant, but nothing about him is ordinary now. He waits. Stillness surrounds him, but it is not peace. It is anticipation. Far away, someone is coming. Apollo has finished searching valleys, riverbanks, and pasture roads. His anger no longer burns hot and wild. It has become colder, sharper, more dangerous. Rage can be loud. Offended pride often becomes quiet. Apollo now knows something impossible has happened. Someone has outplayed him. That realization wounds him more than the theft itself. You must understand Apollo's nature to feel the tension here. Apollo is not merely powerful. He represents order made beautiful. Music with perfect harmony. Prophecy with precise truth. Reason illuminated by divine light. To deceive Apollo is not just theft. It feels like an insult to cosmic clarity, and yet the evidence leads here, to a hidden cave, to a newborn child. Even Apollo hesitates. Surely not. Surely this cannot be the thief. The contradiction itself feels absurd. That absurdity is one of Hermes' earliest weapons. He makes truth look ridiculous. Outside the cave, footsteps stop. The air changes. Warm firelight meets golden radiance. Apollo stands at the entrance, tall and luminous, carrying the unmistakable gravity of divine authority. The scent of laurel and sun-warmed stone seems to enter with him. Maya wakes instantly. Fear tightens her breath. She knows why he has come. She also knows how impossible this accusation sounds. Apollo speaks first. His voice is controlled but sharp. He demands the return of his cattle. He accuses the child. Some surviving hymns describe Maya's reaction almost humorously. She stares at him in disbelief. The child, this infant wrapped in cloth, barely a day old, how could such a creature steal divine cattle? Her protest is logical. Apollo is unmoved, because logic has already failed him, and that is exactly Hermes' domain. Hermes finally opens his eyes. He looks up at Apollo with astonishing calm. No panic, no guilt, only curiosity. Then he speaks. This moment astonished ancient listeners. A newborn answering a god should feel terrifying. Yet Hermes does not speak with fear. He speaks with charm, softly, innocently, almost playfully. He denies everything, not aggressively, elegantly. He points out his age, his size, his helpless appearance. How could he possibly move cattle? How could he even walk? His reasoning sounds flawless. Apollo grows more irritated. Because Hermes is doing something subtle, he is not just lying. He is performing innocence. This distinction matters. A liar resists truth. A performer shapes perception. Hermes already understands theatre. Some modern interpreters see something deeply symbolic here. Hermes becomes patron not only of thieves, but of rhetoric, diplomacy, persuasion, and language itself. He reveals that words are not neutral. Words guide emotion. Words redirect judgment. Apollo senses this and hates it, at least for now. The exchange escalates until one authority remains. Zeus. The dispute must go to Olympus. Maya watches with growing unease as Apollo insists the child stand before Zeus. Hermes remains strangely relaxed. He offers no resistance. If anything, he seems interested, as though this was always the next move. That possibility lingers like smoke. Did Hermes steal merely for cattle, or did he engineer this entire conflict to gain audience with Olympus? Historians continue to debate the psychological meaning of the myth. Some believe the theft symbolizes a younger generation, forcing recognition from established power. Hermes cannot inherit status quietly. He must create disruption. He must be impossible to ignore. Soon Hermes is brought before Zeus. Olympus gleams beneath starlight marble surfaces, glowing silver under the moon. Sacred fires burn in bronze braziers. Divine presence hums through the air like invisible music. The Olympians gather curious. A newborn accused of humiliating Apollo. Already the story spreads. Already Hermes has succeeded in one thing: attention. Apollo presents his accusation with controlled fury. He describes the stolen cattle, the false tracks, the impossible deception. His words are clear and precise. Then Zeus looks at Hermes. Silence. For a long moment, father and son simply observe one another. Ancient poets loved this pause. Because Zeus understands something instantly, this child resembles him. Not in appearance, in instinct, cunning, improvisation, strategic intelligence. The same dangerous brilliance. Hermes speaks again, denying the accusation with such theatrical innocence that even some gods begin suppressing laughter. His tiny form makes the performance absurdly effective. Then Zeus laughs, a full thunder-rich laugh, not because he believes Hermes, because he sees genius. This matters. Punishment pauses when power recognizes itself. Still Zeus demands truth. No more games. Hermes studies the room. He senses something important. Words alone will not end this. He needs transformation, not defense, resolution. So he reveals his final move, the lyre. He produces the instrument crafted from tortoiseshell and stretched strings. The Olympians fall silent. Even Apollo pauses. No one has seen such an instrument before. Hermes sits. Tiny fingers touch strings. Then he plays. The first notes drift into Olympian air. Soft, clear, almost impossible. Sound becomes warmth. Vibration becomes feeling. Music moves through marble halls, across bronze pillars, through divine silence. The melody carries innocence, mischief, wonder longing, and something else. Beauty. Pure beauty. Apollo freezes. Because Apollo understands music more deeply than almost any god. He recognizes instantly what has happened. This child has created something extraordinary, something new, something worthy. The anger inside him falters. Hermes continues playing. The melody expands, weaving sorrow and delight together. Ancient storytellers often emphasize this emotional paradox. Hermes' music comforts even as it unsettles. It opens emotional space where rigid certainty cannot survive. This is his real power. Not theft, not speed, not lies. Transformation. He changes states of being. Anger into curiosity. Suspicion into fascination. Conflict into exchange. Apollo steps closer. His expression softens. He wants the instrument. Badly. Hermes notices. Of course he does. This is the final lesson of the theft. Value is not fixed. Through invention, Hermes has created something more desirable than stolen cattle. Now negotiation begins. The thief becomes trader. This transition is profound. Ancient Greeks associated Hermes with commerce because trade depends on mutual recognition of value. Both sides leave changed. Exchange creates relationship. Apollo speaks. He offers terms. Return the cattle, give him the lyre. In return, peace. Perhaps more than peace. Respect. Hermes agrees. Just like that. The conflict ends not through victory or defeat, but transaction. That outcome defines Hermes forever. Where warriors seek conquest, Hermes seeks exchange. Where rivals expect domination, Hermes creates mutual gain. Zeus watches deeply pleased. He now understands what kind of being stands before him. Not merely clever, not merely mischievous, indispensable, because Olympus has many powerful gods. But very few can connect opposites. Hermes can. Light and shadow, truth and deception, motion and stillness, gods and mortals, life and death. Apollo takes the lyre. He plucks its strings. Music answers. His anger fully dissolves. In some versions, Apollo gives Hermes gifts in return, marking the beginning of an evolving bond. Part rivalry, part admiration, part brotherhood. Their relationship will never remain simple. But tonight, something important has changed. Hermes is no longer hidden, no longer merely Maya's strange child. Olympus has seen him. Olympus has heard him. And Olympus will not forget him. Yet recognition carries consequence. Once a god is noticed, roles begin forming. Responsibilities follow. Titles emerge. And far above the marble halls, destiny is already preparing the next gift. A pair of winged sandals, a staff of power, a path across worlds. Because Hermes has earned attention, soon he will earn purpose. Dawn comes gently over Olympus, washing the marble halls in pale gold. The air smells of laurel smoke, polished stone, fresh bread, and sacred oil. Far below, the mortal world is waking. But here among the gods, time feels wider and stranger. You stand at the edge of the divine court, where bronze braziers glow softly, and every whisper seems to travel farther than it should. At the center of that court stands Hermes, still impossibly young, still small enough to seem harmless, and yet no one now believes he is harmless at all. His first day has already changed the atmosphere of Olympus. He has stolen from Apollo, deceived trackers, invented music, negotiated peace, and made Zeus laugh. It is difficult to punish a child who has revealed a new form of intelligence. It is even harder to ignore him. Apollo stands nearby holding the lyre. His anger has faded, but not entirely. Something remains in him, wounded pride perhaps, or reluctant admiration. He has met a mind unlike his own. That unsettles him. Hermes notices, of course. He notices everything. The young god watches Apollo's fingers move across the strings, watches his expression shift as melody answers. A strange bond begins here, Not warm enough to be simple brotherhood, not sharp enough to remain pure rivalry. It is something in between, a relationship born from conflict transformed by exchange. Ancient traditions often return to this moment because it feels like the first lesson Hermes gives the gods. Opposition does not always need destruction. Sometimes opposition creates music. Zeus rises from his throne. Thunder is quiet around him, but present. You feel it in the bones of the palace, in the slight tremble beneath your feet. He looks at Hermes with amusement, but also with calculation. Zeus is not merely pleased by cleverness, he is measuring usefulness. Olympus already has gods of war, wisdom, sea hearth, love, harvest, prophecy, and craft. But who moves between them? Who carries intentions from one power to another? Who understands ambiguity well enough to survive every court, every household, every battlefield, every shadowed road? Zeus sees the answer standing before him. Some ancient storytellers imagined that a divine sign appeared then. A hawk circled above Olympus, then vanished into cloud. Others said a sudden gust passed through the hall, though no doors were open. No one agreed on the omen's exact form, but many agreed on its meaning. Hermes would not belong to one place. His power would be movement itself. Zeus speaks, and the court stills. He does not condemn Hermes. He does not fully absolve him either. That balance matters. Hermes must understand that wit has consequences. Theft may become negotiation, but it still disturbs order. Deception may reveal brilliance, but it still wounds trust. Zeus grants him recognition, yet recognition comes wrapped in warning. A god who crosses boundaries must also learn when to guard them. Hermes listens carefully. For perhaps the first time, he feels the weight behind laughter. His father's amusement is real, but so is authority. This is a lesson Hermes will carry through eternity. Charm opens doors. Responsibility decides what happens after they open. Maya, watching from the edge of the court, feels pride and unease together. Her hidden child is no longer hidden. The cave has lost him. Not physically, perhaps, but symbolically. The quiet life she imagined can never return. A mother may protect infancy, but she cannot imprison destiny. Hermes glances toward her. For a breath, his playful expression softens. There is love there, though he will rarely show love in grand dramatic gestures. Hermes loves through return, through messages carried through roads, kept open through finding a way back. Still, Maya must sense the sacrifice. To become Hermes, he must leave. To serve all thresholds, he cannot remain inside one shelter. Zeus then announces the beginning of Hermes' place among the immortals. Not yet all his later titles, not yet the full breadth of his worship, but a role begins forming like mist, taking shape over a valley. He will move, he will carry, he will mediate, he will speak where others cannot. Apollo's cattle are returned and the lyre has passed into new hands. But the exchange has created more than peace. It has given Hermes a pattern for life. When conflict rises, find the hidden trade. When anger hardens, introduce beauty. When power blocks the road, create another road. This wisdom is young in him, but already alive. The gods murmur. Some are entertained, some are suspicious. Hera in particular watches with cool attention. She has seen many children of Zeus enter Olympus under complicated circumstances. Hermes may be charming, but charm does not erase politics. To Hera, every new divine child may become another disruption, another reminder of Zeus's wandering desire. Hermes senses her gaze. He does not challenge it, not now. He understands instinctively that some doors open through laughter, while others require patience. This too is wisdom. Athena watches differently. She sees strategy in him, not merely mischief. Perhaps she recognizes a cousin to her own intelligence, though his moves sideways where hers moves like a spear. Athena builds plans. Hermes discovers openings. Their future relationship will be marked by mutual respect, especially when heroes need more than strength. But at this early hour, everything is still possibility. Ancient religion often placed Hermes near beginnings. The start of journeys, the first word of negotiation, the first step beyond the village, the first coin exchanged in a market. Here on Olympus you witness his own beginning as a recognized god. Recognition is not comfort, it is exposure. Once seen, he cannot pretend to be nothing. Once named, he must become what the name demands. Then Apollo approaches him. The court grows quieter. The two brothers face one another, radiance and quicksilver order, and improvisation, golden certainty, and laughing ambiguity. Apollo holds the lyre, and Hermes stands empty-handed. Yet the emptiness does not diminish him. Hermes has already proven that he can create value from almost nothing. Apollo speaks with measured dignity. He acknowledges the instrument's beauty. He does not quite praise the theft, but he cannot deny the genius born from it. In return, some traditions say he grants Hermes a shining whip for guiding cattle, or teaches him certain forms of divination. Other versions disagree, suggesting that Zeus limits Hermes' prophetic power, because complete truth belongs to Apollo. This disagreement matters. Myth remembers Hermes as close to prophecy, yet never identical with Apollo. He may not command perfect foresight, but he understands signs, luck, timing, and opportunity. He reads the world in motion. That is a different kind of knowing, perhaps more human. Hermes accepts what is given. He does not resent Apollo's greater prophetic authority, or perhaps he does quietly. Myths rarely tell us everything a god feels, but you can imagine the young Hermes learning another truth. No one receives all powers. Even immortals are shaped by limits. His gift will not be fixed certainty. His gift will be passage through uncertainty. Outside the palace, clouds drift across blue sky. Far below, roads twist through Greece like pale threads. Farmers walk to fields. Traders load donkeys. Sailors prepare ropes in harbour towns where gulls cry above salt water. None of them yet know how often they will whisper Hermes' name. But the need is already there. Every traveller fears getting lost. Every merchant fears a failed bargain. Every messenger fears arriving too late. Every soul one day will fear the road after death. Hermes will belong to all of them. That is the hidden scale of this recognition. Olympus sees a clever child. The world will receive a companion for thresholds. Zeus gives a final warning softened by affection. Hermes must use his cunning in service of divine order, not merely personal amusement. It is a command, but also a prophecy. For how can cunning remain obedient forever? How can a god of roads serve a throne without sometimes wandering beyond it? The question lingers in the bright Olympian air. Hermes bows, but not too deeply. His respect is real. His independence is also real. Zeus sees both and smiles. Perhaps he knows that such a son cannot be fully controlled. Perhaps that is precisely why he will be useful. As the gathering ends, Hermes looks once more toward the world below. The cave of Maia lies hidden in shadow. Apollo's pastures gleam in sunlight. Olympus rises behind him with all its power and expectation. He now stands between them all, child and god, trickster and servant, thief and inventor, son and stranger. This is his first true identity, and it is not singular. Hermes will never be one thing. He will always be the movement between things. Yet destiny has only opened the first gate. Soon gifts will come that match his nature, sandals touched by wind, a staff marked by power, and duties no other god can bear. Recognition has brought him into Olympus. Purpose will send him out again. The next morning feels different. Olympus has not changed in stone, yet its silence has shifted. The halls still gleam beneath pale sunlight. Sacred smoke still rises from bronze bowls. Far below, rivers still curl through valleys, and shepherds still lead flocks across dew-wet slopes. But for Hermes, the world has widened. Yesterday, he was hidden in Maia's cave. Today, every road seems to wait for him. You stand beside him at the edge of Olympus, where clouds move slowly below the palace steps. The air is thin, cool and bright. It tastes faintly of rain and lightning. Hermes looks outward, and for once he is quiet. Not because he lacks words, because he feels something new forming around him. Recognition has become expectation. Zeus has seen him. Apollo has tested him. Maya has begun to lose him to destiny. Now the question changes. What does a restless god become when the world finally opens, a sign appears in the sky? Two birds rise from opposite cliffs, crossing each other in the morning light before vanishing into cloud. Some ancient watchers might have called it an omen of passage. Two directions meeting, two paths crossing, a life built not in one place, but between places. Hermes watches the birds until they disappear. Perhaps he understands. Perhaps he only smiles. Soon Zeus calls him forward. The king of the gods does not speak with the amused softness of the previous day. His voice is calmer, now heavier, shaped by command. Hermes is not summoned as a child to be judged. He is summoned as a god to be given purpose. Before him are placed gifts that seem almost alive. A pair of sandals light as breath touched with wings. A staff slender and sacred, carrying an authority older than any marketplace. These are not ornaments. They are symbols of office. The sandals answer his desire for motion. The staff answers his need to guide. Together, they reveal what Zeus has decided. Hermes will not remain in halls. He will move where others cannot. He will cross distances too dangerous, too delicate, or too strange for slower gods. When Zeus speaks, you feel the shape of the future settle over him. Hermes is to become messenger, not servant in the low sense, not errand boy of Olympus, something more subtle. He will carry divine will across unstable spaces. He will deliver commands, warnings, invitations, threats, bargains, and secrets. He will enter palaces, fields, caves, battle camps, sea cliffs, and lonely roads at dusk. He will move between immortal authority and mortal fear. Hermes reaches for the sandals first. His fingers touch them, and wind stirs though no door is open. The sensation is immediate, freedom, but freedom with a price. Until now, his movement has belonged to himself. He wandered because he wished to wander. He stole because curiosity pulled him onward. He returned when it suited him. These sandals changed that. Now movement becomes duty. Speed becomes responsibility. A messenger cannot always choose the message. A road may be open, yet the task may be painful. Hermes senses this, perhaps dimly. His young face, usually bright with mischief, grows thoughtful. Ancient myth rarely pauses over such emotions, but you can feel them here. Every gift from Zeus carries a hidden chain. Every honor binds. He slips the sandals on. They fit as though they were made before his birth. Tiny wings tremble at his heels. The marble beneath him seems less solid. His body lightens. The air recognizes him. Then he takes one step. The world blurs. Not violently, softly like mist parting. A breath later he stands across the hall. Another step, and he is near the open sky. Another, and he almost laughs. This is not ordinary speed. It is belonging. Some gods command places. Poseidon belongs to the sea. Hades belongs to the underworld. Hestia belongs to the hearth. Hermes belongs to passage itself. Wherever there is distance, he has meaning. Wherever something must move, he is near. Zeus watches carefully. So does Apollo. The older brother understands now that Hermes' gift will not threaten his music. It will occupy another realm entirely. Apollo illuminates. Hermes connects. Apollo declares. Hermes delivers. Their rivalry begins to soften into structure. Not friendship exactly, not yet, but balance. Hermes then takes the staff. Later ages will imagine it entwined with serpents shining with mystery, used to calm conflict and guide souls. Older traditions vary, and historians continue to debate how its imagery changed over time. But within the mythic world, its meaning is clear. This staff marks Hermes as one who may pass safely through danger. It is a sign to strangers, a promise to travelers, a warning to those who would block the road. He lifts it, and a second sensation moves through him. Not freedom this time, authority, quieter than Zeus's thunder, less radiant than Apollo's music, but real, the authority of the boundary crosser, the one allowed through gates, the one whose arrival means something is about to change. For a moment, Hermes feels pride. He has earned this, not by obedience, not by lineage alone, by brilliance, by daring, by transforming conflict into exchange. Yet pride is not the only emotion. Beneath it lies a flicker of loneliness. If he belongs to Rhodes, will he ever belong to home? If everyone needs him in passing, who will keep him when the message is delivered? You feel that question settle quietly in him, though he does not speak it. Maya would understand. Perhaps she already does. Far away in her mountain cave, she may feel the first tug of absence, as mothers sometimes do before departure is announced. Some traditions imagine she dreamed that night of her child standing at many doors, always smiling, never staying. Was the dream a blessing or a warning? No one could know. Zeus gives Hermes his first command soon after. A small task, perhaps, compared with later journeys. He must carry word from Olympus to a distant shrine where priests wait beneath olive trees and smoke-darkened rafters. The message itself is simple, but the road is not. It crosses mountains, forests, riverbeds, villages, and places where mortals still fear the voices of unseen things. Hermes listens. For once, he does not joke. He nods. Then he moves. You follow as the world opens beneath him. Olympus falls behind. Clouds stream past. The smell of snow fades into pine, then into warm earth, then into salt carried from distant harbours. Greece spreads below, like a woven cloth, fields, cliffs, temples, sheep paths, shining water and towns where morning fires rise blue into the air. Hermes sees everything. He sees a merchant counting coins with anxious fingers, a shepherd searching for a lost lamb, a young woman tying a ribbon at a roadside stone, a sailor touching an amulet before stepping onto a ship. None of them know him fully yet. Still, their lives already belong to his future. They live by roads, exchanges, departures, arrivals, risks. They live in uncertainty. Hermes understands uncertainty better than any god born in perfect halls. That is why mortals will love him. Not because he is pure. He is not. Not because he is safe. He is not that either. They will love him because he knows the road is never simple. He knows survival often requires wit, timing, language, and a little luck. By dusk, he reaches the shrine. The priests are gathered beneath cypress trees. Oil lamps tremble in the blue evening air. The smell of burnt barley and honey rises from the altar. They hear the faint rush of wings before they see him. Then Hermes appears, young and shining staff in hand sandals touched by fading light. He speaks Zeus's message. The words are delivered clearly. No distortion, no trick, no performance beyond what the moment requires. And this is his first quiet victory as messenger. He learns that cleverness is not always deception. Sometimes cleverness is knowing when truth must travel cleanly. The priests bow. Wind moves through the trees. A dog barks somewhere beyond the shrine wall. Night gathers. Hermes turns back toward Olympus. But he is no longer exactly the same. The theft made him famous. The liar made him admired. This journey makes him useful. And usefulness among gods is a deeper kind of power. Yet another question waits ahead. If Hermes can carry messages between Olympus and Earth, what other boundaries might he cross? What doors will open when even death begins to need a guide? The sandals are only the beginning. The road has accepted him. Soon the gods themselves will depend on his speed. And every message he carries will teach him that words once released can never fully be called back. Night settles over Greece like dark silk drawn across the world. Oil lamps glow in village windows, harbour fires burn beside black water. Waves strike stone walls with slow rhythmic force. Above everything, the stars stretch in endless silence, cold and brilliant. High on Olympus, Hermes returns from his first official journey. Dust from mortal roads still clings faintly to his sandals. The scent of cypress smoke lingers in his hair. He has delivered his first divine message. And though the task seemed simple, something within him has shifted. He now understands a truth that no cradle, no theft, and no gift could teach. Carrying words changes the carrier. A message is never weightless. Even when spoken in calm tones, words carry consequences. A warning can start a war. A promise can preserve a kingdom. A secret can destroy a family. Hermes begins to understand that speed alone will never define his role. The burden lies in what moves, not merely how fast it travels. Zeus wastes little time. One task becomes another, then another. Olympus has discovered something dangerous and useful. Hermes can go anywhere. Soon his days become a constant crossing of thresholds. You travel with him as marble halls give way to forests, coastlines, temples, mountain shrines, and royal courts. One moment he stands beside Zeus receiving command. The next, he appears before a king trembling beside sacred fire. Sometimes the message is blessing. Rain will come, harvest will prosper, an offering has pleased the gods. At other times the message chills the blood. A vow has been broken, a warning ignored, judgment approaches. Hermes learns quickly that messengers are rarely loved by everyone. Mortals often thank the bearer of good news. They often resent the bearer of bad news, even when blame lies elsewhere. This is one of the first emotional burdens of his office. He becomes the face of consequences he did not create. Ancient societies understood this deeply. Messengers moved between powers, yet belonged fully to none. They carried authority without owning it. Hermes begins to live inside that paradox. At first he enjoys the motion. Every road offers novelty. Every city smells different. In one harbour town, salt and fish dominate the air. In another, crushed olives and fresh bread. Temple courtyards carry incense, warm wax, and old stone heated by sun. Desert edges taste of dust. Mountain passes sting with frost. No god experiences the mortal world as widely as Hermes. Apollo sees through clarity. Athena through strategy. Hermes through contact. He feels the texture of civilization itself. This shapes him more than Olympus realizes. The gods speak in grand designs, but Hermes hears mortal details. He hears the widow whispering prayers over a single loaf of bread. He hears merchants bargaining over copper weights. He hears children inventing games beside wells. He hears lies, hopes, bargains, and excuses. Every voice teaches him something. His gift for language sharpens. He becomes not only a speaker, but an interpreter. That skill soon proves essential. Conflict among gods rarely comes from raw force alone. Often it begins with misunderstanding, wounded pride, or badly delivered words. Hermes becomes the one who softens edges. Zeus notices. A command delivered by thunder inspires obedience. The same command delivered by Hermes may inspire cooperation. That difference matters. Some researchers believe this symbolic role explains why Hermes became associated with diplomacy. He stands between intention and reception. He understands that truth without timing can fail. Wisdom without empathy can wound. Even honesty requires skill. Yet this gift carries danger. A messenger who understands persuasion may begin shaping messages, not merely carrying them. Hermes becomes aware of that temptation. He could adjust tone, remove a phrase, add emphasis, change outcomes. Power quietly accumulates in subtle places. This realization unsettles him more than he expects. One evening, after delivering words from Hera to a priestess in Argos, Hermes pauses at a crossroads shrine. The sky burns red with sunset. Cicadas sing from dry grass. A stone marker stands beside the road, simple and weathered. Travellers have left tiny offerings, coins, figs, ribbons, oil. Hermes studies the offerings. No grand temple, no marble monument, just small acts of trust. He feels something unfamiliar, responsibility, not imposed by Zeus, chosen. These mortals trust unseen forces. They trust roads they cannot predict. They trust messages they cannot verify. If Hermes distorts what he carries, entire lives shift. For perhaps the first time, his cleverness meets restraint. That restraint becomes a quiet form of maturity. But growth never arrives without challenge. The first major failure comes sooner than expected. Ancient traditions disagree on the exact story, but several speak of a message delayed. A king waits for divine instruction before committing troops to battle. Hermes receives the command. The journey should be swift. Yet along the road, a distraction arises. Some versions say a dispute among traders. Others say a sacred festival. Still others mention a clever mortal storyteller whose words captured Hermes' curiosity. Whatever the cause, Hermes delays. Not long, only enough, but enough is enough. By the time he arrives, the king has already chosen. Men are dead. Blood darkens the earth. Smoke rises from ruined siege engines. The battlefield smells of iron ash, sweat, and wet soil. Hermes stands in silence. The message in his hand suddenly feels heavy. Too late. The words remain correct. Their timing is ruined. That distinction haunts him. This is his first true failure as messenger. No trick can undo it. No charm softens death. The survivors do not know he was late. Zeus does. Hermes does. That is enough. When he returns to Olympus, Zeus says little. That silence cuts deeper than anger. Hermes understands the lesson without thunder. Speed is not a gift for pleasure alone. Delay has cost. Choice has consequence. This moment hardens something inside him. Not cruelty, discipline. Ancient storytellers rarely emphasize this emotional shift, but it matters for his arc. Hermes must evolve beyond charming improvisation. To become indispensable, he must learn reliability. Freedom without discipline becomes chaos. Discipline without flexibility becomes rigidity. Hermes must balance both. This balance shapes his growing relationship with Apollo. Apollo notices the change. Their conversations become less adversarial, more thoughtful. Music remains a bridge between them. Sometimes Hermes watches Apollo play the lyre he created. Strange, isn't it? The instrument born from theft now becomes a source of harmony on Olympus. Consequences transform. Apollo eventually speaks a truth Hermes does not expect. A messenger, he says, must honor rhythm, not merely speed, rhythm. The right note at the right moment creates harmony. Too early or too late, even truth becomes discord. Hermes listens. The lesson resonates. He begins seeing messages as music. Each word carries tempo, pause, emphasis, silence. This realization deepens his craft. Soon, he is no longer merely delivering words. He is carrying intention. This makes him invaluable. Gods begin requesting Hermes specifically. Even those who distrust his trickster nature cannot deny his effectiveness. He reaches places others cannot. He understands listeners others overlook. Yet, constant movement extracts a price. Home grows abstract. Olympus becomes departure point, not residence. Maya's cave becomes memory. Even when resting, Hermes feels roads pulling at him. Wind at the window. Distant voices. Unfinished journeys. He belongs everywhere, and therefore nowhere. Loneliness arrives quietly. Not dramatic. Not crushing. Subtle. A messenger always arrives from somewhere and leaves towards somewhere else. Rarely does he remain. Hermes begins sensing this strange sorrow. He is welcomed often, kept rarely. Perhaps this is why crossroads begin attracting him. Crossroads mirror his soul. No single direction, only choices. One night beneath a star-filled sky, Hermes stands alone at such a crossing. Torchlight from distant farms flickers faintly across hills. Cool wind moves through olive trees. Then a strange omen appears. A fox crosses the road, stops, looks directly at him, then disappears into darkness. Ancient Greeks often associated foxes with cunning and survival through intelligence. Hermes watches the animal vanish and feels something difficult to name. Recognition. He understands now what separates him from other gods. Not strength, not beauty, not prophecy. Adaptation. Movement through uncertainty. He thrives where certainty fails. And soon, the gods will need that gift in a realm even more terrifying than mortal roads. Because there exists one boundary few willingly cross. The boundary between life and death. And before long, Hermes will be asked to guide those who no longer breathe. As the seasons turn, Hermes' name begins spreading far beyond Olympus, not through thunder like Zeus, nor through prophecy like Apollo, but through whispers carried from traveller to traveller. A merchant speaks of impossible luck after praying beside a roadside stone. A shepherd swears a lost flock returned after leaving oil at a shrine. A sailor touches a carved marker before boarding ship and survives a storm that destroys other vessels. These stories travel the way Hermes himself travels quietly, quickly changing slightly with every retelling. You begin to see something remarkable. Hermes is becoming a god not of one class, one city, or one ritual. He belongs to movement, and movement touches everyone. Across Greece, simple stone markers begin appearing at crossroads. Village entrances, harbour paths, and mountain roads. These early sacred markers, later called Hermes, are humble compared to grand temples. Rough stone, carved face, sometimes only a pillar. Yet people stop before them. They leave coins, olives, honey figs, ribbons, or whispered prayers. The offerings are rarely extravagant. They are practical, safe travel, good bargains, protection from thieves, success in trade, a profitable sale, a fair exchange. Hermes becomes beloved among ordinary people because his blessings feel immediate. Harvest gods may bless seasons. War gods may favour armies. Hermes helps you survive tomorrow's journey. But something unexpected happens. Those who pray to him are not only honest travellers. Thieves begin praying too. This contradiction unsettles even Olympus. At first it begins quietly. A young pickpocket whispers Hermes' name before slipping a purse from a distracted trader. A smuggler asks for fog on coastal roads. A cattle thief leaves a coin at a roadside shrine with ironic devotion. The pattern grows. Soon even bandits speak his name. Why? The answer lies deep within Hermes' nature. He understands systems, and anyone operating inside or outside systems must understand movement, timing, opportunity, and risk. Honest merchants use those skills. So do thieves. Hermes cannot easily belong to only one side. This creates one of the strangest tensions in Greek religion. How can a god protect both merchants and thieves? How can he bless both trade and theft? Some philosophers later wrestled with this question. One interpretation survives with unusual clarity. Hermes governs exchange itself, not morality alone. Wealth moving through agreed rules becomes trade. Wealth moving through broken rules becomes theft. The movement remains. Hermes senses the contradiction, and it troubles him more than outsiders realize. One evening, after delivering messages to two coastal towns, he pauses above a harbour where ships rock gently in moonlit water. Salt fills the air. Rope creaks against wooden masts. Somewhere nearby, a drunken argument erupts in a tavern before fading into laughter. Hermes watches two scenes unfold almost side by side. At one stall, a merchant negotiates honestly over amphorae of oil. Nearby, a thief quietly cuts a purse string. Both succeed through timing. Both rely on reading people. Both depend on movement. Hermes feels a strange discomfort. If all movement falls under his domain, does that make him responsible for all outcomes? The question lingers. For the first time, he feels the burden of divine symbolism. Gods do not choose only followers they approve of. Worship reveals human reality. Humans are mixed creatures. Cleverness builds cities. Cleverness also exploits weakness. Hermes recognizes himself in both. That realization unsettles him. Because trickery once felt playful, now he sees its shadow. The same gift that invented music can enable deception. The same charm that resolves conflict can manipulate trust. Power always carries dual potential. Ancient myths often hide psychological truths beneath divine stories. Here, Hermes confronts his own reflection. He is not simply patron of cunning. He embodies the moral ambiguity of intelligence itself. That lesson sharpens when Zeus gives him a delicate assignment. A dispute has erupted between two city leaders over stolen goods. Both accuse the other of dishonor. Trade routes are threatened. Tension rises toward violence. Hermes is sent not merely to deliver commands, but to mediate. This is new. Mediation demands more than speed. It demands judgment. When Hermes arrives, the atmosphere feels brittle. Torchlight flickers against stone walls. Guards grip spears. Merchants stand anxious. The smell of sweat wine and lamp smoke fills the chamber. Voices overlap in accusation. Each leader insists on truth. Each sounds convincing. Hermes listens. Carefully, he notices what others miss. One man speaks quickly, but avoids detail. The other offers detail, but performs outrage too perfectly. Servants exchange glances. A guard shifts uneasily. Tiny signals emerge. Hermes follows patterns. He asks few questions. Then he sees it. Not the theft itself, the motive. One leader has exaggerated losses to justify crushing a rival. The goods matter less than power. Hermes understands immediately. Conflict often hides beneath stated reasons. People rarely fight only over what they claim. This insight becomes central to his wisdom. He steps between them. No thunder, no force, only words. Calm, precise, impossible to ignore. He reconstructs events with such clarity that silence gradually falls over the chamber. Truth surfaces, not because Hermes compels confession, but because he reveals contradictions too elegantly to deny. The guilty man breaks first. The dispute ends. War dissolves. Trade survives. Hermes leaves with something new. Respect, not admiration for speed. Respect for discernment. Word spreads. Hermes is no longer seen only as swift messenger or clever trickster. He becomes guardian of negotiation, patron of contracts, protector of exchange. This expands his worship dramatically, yet success brings another challenge. More prayers, more requests, more dependence. Travelers pray at dawn. Merchants pray before bargaining. Diplomats pray before meetings. Gamblers whisper his name over dice. Liars invoke him before deception. Everyone wants advantage. Hermes begins hearing endless human desire. Luck, profit, escape, protection, victory. Sometimes gratitude, often greed. This exhausts him in ways physical travel never did. Motion he can handle. Expectation is heavier. One night he visits Maya. The mountain cave feels smaller now. Familiar smoke rises from sacred fire. Moss still clings to damp stone. The scent of time remains unchanged. Maya studies him quietly. Mothers notice fatigue even gods conceal. She asks no grand question. Only one. Are you happy? Hermes pauses. The silence says everything. He smiles but gently, not his usual playful grin. I am needed, he says. Maya watches him. Needed is not the same as happy. She understands. Perhaps better than he does. Hermes has gained purpose, reputation, worship, influence. Yet stillness remains difficult. Belonging remains elusive. He serves all roads, but rests on none. Before dawn, Maya shares a dream. She saw a road splitting into countless paths. At every path stood travelers. Some noble, some cruel, some desperate. All called Hermes' name. Then the road extended beyond mortal lands into darkness. No stars, no birds, no breath, only silence. Maya's voice lowers. I think another road is waiting for you. The cave grows colder. Hermes feels something unusual, dread, because he understands what road she means. There is one path all mortals eventually walk. No merchant bargains beyond it. No thief escapes it. No traveler returns unchanged. The road to the underworld. Ancient traditions say omens began appearing soon after. Lamps extinguished without wind. Dogs howled at empty doorways. Black birds circled shrines at twilight. Priests whispered that the boundaries between worlds were stirring. Hermes senses it too. A summons approaches, and this journey will be unlike any before. Because roads among the living still carry voices, warmth, and choice. The road of the dead carries something else. Silence. Soon Hermes will learn whether even his charm can survive that darkness. The first time Hermes is called to the realm of the dead, the world feels wrong long before the journey begins. Dawn arrives without birdsong. Mist hangs low over valleys and refuses to lift. Dogs bark toward empty roads, then whimper into silence. Even the wind seems reluctant to move. Across Greece, priests whisper of omens. Lamps flicker blue, oil burns too fast, shadows stretch strangely across temple floors. Something is shifting at the boundary between worlds. You feel it too, like cold water slowly rising around bare feet. Hermes stands at the edge of Olympus, watching the strange stillness below. His winged sandals are ready, his staff rests in his hand. Yet, for the first time since receiving them, movement does not feel like freedom. It feels like descent. The summons comes from a place few gods visit willingly, the underworld, the realm ruled by Hades and Persephone. Even among immortals, that kingdom inspires unease. It is not merely death that troubles them. Death is natural. What unsettles them is finality. Roads usually promise return. The underworld questions that promise. Zeus speaks with unusual gravity. A new duty must be assigned. Souls continue arriving at the threshold between life and death, confused, frightened, unwilling to step forward. Someone is needed to guide them. Someone swift, calm, and capable of crossing boundaries without becoming trapped by them. Someone who understands passage. The choice feels inevitable. Hermes says nothing at first. Outwardly calm, inwardly unsettled. This task differs from every mission before it. Messages among the living still carry possibility. Words can change outcomes. Warnings can prevent disaster. Negotiations can alter futures. Death offers no negotiation, at least not for most. Ancient scholars often noted the psychological brilliance of this myth. Hermes, god of movement, becomes guide of the final movement all humans fear most. He who loves roads must now walk the road no mortal wishes to take. His sandals carry him downward, far below Olympus, beyond olive groves and harbour towns, beyond shepherd hills and forest paths lies the hidden descent. Ancient traditions disagree on its location. Some place the entrance near caves, breathing cold air from deep earth. Others, near volcanic fissures or forgotten rivers, swallowed by stone. No single geography survives. Perhaps that uncertainty is intentional. Death has many doors. Hermes finds one. A cavern yawns open in black rock. Cold air pours outward, dry and ancient. No scent of pine, no salt wind, no birds. Only stone shadow and silence heavy enough to feel physical. He steps inside. Each footfall echoes. The light behind him fades. The air cools sharply. Moisture vanishes. Even sound behaves differently here, swallowed before travelling far. Hermes tightens his grip on the staff. For the first time in his life, he feels something close to fear. Not panic, not terror. Something quieter. Reverence. The path descends until he reaches the river. Charon waits beside dark water, silent and severe. His boat barely moves. The river itself seems unnatural. No ripples from wind, no reflection of stars. Just black current flowing toward unseen depths. Charon studies Hermes. No greeting, no hostility, only recognition. The ferryman has watched countless souls cross. He knows immediately that this traveller belongs neither among the dead nor fully among ordinary gods. Hermes boards. The boat moves. No oars splash. No sound breaks the stillness. This silence affects Hermes more than darkness. Among mortals, roads carry noise, voices. Animals, wheels, footsteps, waves. Silence here feels absolute. Then he hears them. Souls. Not loud. Soft. Whispers of confusion. Questions without answers. Where am I? Is this real? Can I go back? The words drift through darkness like torn cloth in wind. Hermes closes his eyes briefly. He understands. These are travellers. Lost travellers. And for the first time, his purpose becomes clear. Not messenger. Guide. That difference matters. Messages move information. Guides move beings. The burden is deeper. When the boat reaches shore, Hermes steps into the underworld proper. Grey fields stretch endlessly beneath dim, lightless sky. Shapes move slowly in distant mist. No sunrise, no sunset, only endless twilight. At last, he enters the court of Hades. Hades sits in still authority, darker than shadow, yet never chaotic. Beside him sits Persephone, carrying strange duality spring memory, wrapped in death's calm. Hermes feels their gaze. Hades speaks first. His voice is low, measured, inevitable. No wasted words. Souls hesitate at the threshold, he explains. Fear delays passage. Attachment creates suffering. The dead need someone who can calm movement between worlds. Persephone speaks next. Her voice surprises Hermes. Gentle, sad. She understands transition better than anyone. She knows what it means to belong to two realms. Perhaps that is why her gaze lingers on Hermes. She recognizes something familiar. Betweenness. Hermes listens. Then he is brought to the threshold. There they stand. Newly dead souls. Some old. Some young. Some confused. Some angry. Some still reaching backward toward life. A child clings to memory. An old sailor mutters unfinished prayers. A warrior stares at phantom blood on his hands. A mother whispers names no one answers. Hermes stops. Everything inside him changes. Until now, movement has been exciting. Here movement means surrender. He realizes something profound. Travel among the living involves choice. This journey rarely does. How do you guide someone through what they never wanted? No trick answers that. No clever lie helps. Charm alone fails. Hermes must discover something deeper. Compassion. This becomes one of the most important transformations of his life. The trickster learns tenderness. He approaches the nearest soul. Not with command, not with divine authority, with calm, with presence. He speaks softly. You do not walk alone. Simple words, yet powerful. The soul looks at him. Breathing steadies. Fear softens. Hermes offers his staff. The soul follows. Then another follows. And another. Slowly the impossible happens. Movement begins. Not forced. Guided. Hermes discovers his greatest strength here. He makes transition bearable. He cannot erase grief. He cannot undo death. But he can reduce terror. Ancient Greeks deeply valued this aspect of Hermes. Death remained frightening, but not necessarily solitary. Hermes Psychopompus, the guide of souls, offered companionship through the threshold. This title changes him forever. He returns to the mortal world different, quieter. His jokes remain, his wit remains. But beneath them lies new gravity. He has seen the one road every mortal walks. He now understands why travelers pray with such urgency. Every journey echoes the final journey. Every departure contains mortality. Even simple roads matter more now. Yet this duty carries hidden cost. Repeated crossings expose him to sorrow no Olympian palace can soften. He hears final regrets, last unfinished words, silent grief, countless endings. These memories stay with him. He rarely speaks of them. Loneliness deepens. Who can truly understand a god who walks daily among both markets and ghosts? Perhaps only one, Persephone. Some traditions suggest an unspoken respect grew between them. Not romance, recognition. Two beings shaped by thresholds. That bond remains quiet, but meaningful. One evening, after guiding souls across again, Hermes pauses at the boundary between worlds. Behind him lies silence. Ahead lies wind-scent sound life. Then a strange omen appears. A single white feather drifts downward from empty air. No bird, no source, just a feather. It lands near his sandal. Ancient interpreters debated its meaning. Peace passage, a blessing from unseen powers. Hermes cannot know, but he senses one truth. He now serves not only roads across Earth, he serves roads between existence itself. And soon, this terrifying new wisdom will be tested in the world of the living. Because Olympus is preparing a task requiring not only speed, but cunning deadly enough to overcome a monster with 100 watching eyes. After countless journeys between Olympus and the underworld, Hermes begins to carry a different kind of silence within him. It is subtle. Those who meet him still see the quick smile, the bright eyes, the effortless charm. Merchants still pray to him at dawn. Travelers still touch roadside markers before long journeys. Thieves still whisper his name in shadowed alleys. Yet something has changed. Hermes now understands fear in ways he did not before. He has watched souls surrender everything familiar. He has learned that movement is not always liberation. Sometimes movement is loss. This deeper understanding sharpens him. It also prepares him for a task no ordinary cunning could solve. The summons comes from Zeus, and the atmosphere in Olympus feels unusually tense. Thunder does not roar, but pressure hangs in the air like a storm waiting beyond the horizon. Even the sacred flames burn lower. Hermes arrives at the divine court and immediately senses trouble. Zeus is not alone. There is impatience in his posture, caution in his gaze. That combination always signals danger. The problem begins, as many Olympian problems do, with desire and consequence. Zeus has once again drawn the wrath of Hera. This time, the center of conflict is Io, a mortal woman transformed and hidden from Hera's suspicion. But Hera is not easily deceived. She demands Io as a gift and places her under relentless guard. Her guardian is no ordinary servant. He is Argus Panoptes. Even speaking his name feels heavy. Argus is vigilance made flesh. Ancient descriptions vary. Some say 100 eyes, others fewer, but all agree on the essential truth. He almost never sleeps completely. Even when some eyes close, others remain open. Nothing escapes his watch for long. He is patience without fatigue, attention without mercy. Hermes listens as Zeus explains. Free Io, avoid open conflict, do not provoke Hera directly. A delicate mission. Impossible, perhaps. Hermes says nothing at first. Inside calculation begins immediately. He understands the problem's true shape. Argus is not powerful merely because he is strong. He is dangerous because he removes openings. Hermes thrives on openings, loopholes, blind spots, misread intentions. Argus has almost none. Almost. That single word matters. Hermes leaves Olympus in silence. Wind moves past his winged sandals as he descends toward the fields where Io is held. Along the journey, he thinks not like a warrior, but like a strategist. How do you defeat a watcher who never fully sleeps? Force would alert Hera. Speed solves nothing if eyes remain open. Deception alone fails if observation never breaks. This mission demands something rarer, patience. That realization feels almost ironic. The fastest god must slow down. When Hermes finally reaches the grazing field, twilight has begun. Long shadows stretch across grass. The smell of earth, wild herbs, and animal musk fills the air. Io wanders nearby in bovine form, her movements restless and sad. Even without words, grief radiates from her. She remembers human life, yet cannot reclaim it. And beside her stands Argus. Massive, still, terrifying in his calm. Eyes everywhere, watching sky-ground horizon movement. Hermes feels the weight of that gaze immediately. To be observed by Argus is unsettling. There is no casual glance, no human distraction. Every motion becomes noticeable. Every breath feels accounted for. Ancient interpreters often saw Argus as more than a monster. He symbolizes surveillance, suspicion, and the exhausting pressure of constant observation. Under such gaze, freedom shrinks. Hermes understands. This is not merely a rescue. It is liberation from unbroken scrutiny. He cannot approach as Hermes the divine messenger, so he becomes something else. A shepherd, simple cloak, rustic staff, dust on feet, ordinary, or so it appears. Disguise has always suited Hermes, because identity itself feels fluid to him. He does not wear masks merely to hide. He enters perspectives. He becomes believable because he understands behavior. He approaches slowly. Argus watches. No hostility. Not yet. Hermes greets him casually like a traveller passing time near evening pasture. He speaks of weather roads, grazing conditions. Nothing important. Argus responds little. Hermes expected that. Trust is not gained through pressure. It grows through rhythm. So Hermes stays. He sits on a rock. He speaks occasionally, then falls silent, then speaks again. No rush. Hours pass. Night deepens. Stars emerge. Cold air settles over grass. Argus remains vigilant. Yet something subtle changes. Tension lowers. The disguised shepherd no longer feels like threat, just presence. Hermes waits. Then he reaches for an old tool. Music. Not the lyre this time, a reed pipe. Some traditions say this is how the flute entered the story. Others disagree, but all versions preserve the essential idea. Hermes uses sound. Soft notes drift into night air, gentle, repetitive, warm. The melody is not grand like Apollo's music. It is simpler, earthier, rhythmic like footsteps or breathing. Argus listens. Some eyes remain fixed on Io. Others drift toward Hermes. Music continues. Then Hermes begins telling stories. Not heroic epics, quiet stories, road stories. Stories of shepherds, wandering stars, talking rivers, strange travelers, clever foxes, foolish kings. Story after story, voice and music weave together. This is where Hermes becomes most dangerous. He does not attack the body. He influences attention. Attention shifts. Fatigue enters. Ancient priests understood something profound here. Vigilance rarely collapses under force alone. It erodes through time, rhythm, comfort, and repetition. Hermes weaponizes calm. One by one, Argus' eyes begin closing. 10, 20, 40, more. Still Hermes continues. Same calm tone, same gentle melody, no sudden movement, no greed. Patience. The god of speed wins through slowness. That paradox defines the moment. Soon, only a handful of eyes remain open. Argus struggles. He resists. But stories keep flowing. Music keeps breathing. Night grows colder. Stars wheel overhead. At last, the final eyes close. Silence. True silence. Hermes stops playing. For one heartbeat, he simply watches. Even now, he feels no triumph. Only clarity. This is the opening. The only opening. His expression changes. Warm storyteller disappears. Divine purpose returns. In a single movement faster than mortal sight, Hermes strikes. Ancient sources vary on the exact weapon blade staff curved sword, but the result remains the same. Argus falls. The hundred-eyed watcher is no more. The field becomes still. Wind moves softly through grass. Io stares. Freedom hangs in the air, yet Hermes does not celebrate. He feels something unexpected. Respect. Argus was enemy, yes, but also duty-bound, faithful, unyielding. Hermes understands duty now more than he once did. Killing Argus leaves no joy, only consequence. This marks another stage of maturity. Younger Hermes loved victory. Older Hermes understands cost. He gently approaches Io. His voice is calm, reassuring. She is safe, for now. But consequences already move. Far away, Hera feels the rupture. Ancient myths describe divine awareness like pressure shifts before storms. Something sacred to her has ended. Wrath awakens. Hermes knows it instantly. This mission succeeded. But success has triggered something larger. That is the cruel truth of divine politics. Solutions create new problems. Always. Before leaving, Hermes glances once at Argus's still form. Some traditions say Hera later honored him by placing his many eyes upon the tail of peafowl, creating the peacock's brilliant pattern. Whether literal or symbolic, the image survives for a reason. Watchfulness never fully disappears. It transforms. Hermes turns toward Olympus, with Io's fate still uncertain. His sandals stir night wind. Yet one thought lingers. He defeated strength through patience. He defeated vigilance through story. He won not by overpowering attention, but by guiding it. That realization will matter greatly, because soon he will face not only watchers, but wrath itself. And Hera does not fall asleep. The night after Argus Panoptes falls feels strangely quiet. Too quiet. Grass bends under cold wind. Clouds drift across the moon, casting long moving shadows over the valley where Io now stands free. Yet freedom Hermes has learned is rarely simple. Liberation often arrives carrying new consequences. You stand beside Hermes as he watches Io tremble in the silver light. Her body is released from surveillance, but not from suffering. Her eyes still carry human terror. Her voice remains trapped behind an animal form. Hermes understands something painful in that moment. Rescue and restoration are not the same. He has broken chains, but he has not yet healed what was broken. Wind sharpens, the air changes. Hermes feels it before anything visible appears. Wrath. Far above Olympus, Hera has sensed Argus's death and grief, mixes instantly with fury. This matters more than many later storytellers admit. Hera is often remembered only through jealousy, but Argus was loyal, faithful, tireless. His death wounds her pride, yes, but also her trust. Someone devoted to her has fallen. Anger becomes personal. That makes it dangerous. Ancient poets often describe divine anger through nature. The temperature drops, birds vanish. The silence before a storm becomes oppressive. Here the signs gather quickly. Io senses them too. She backs away, muscles trembling. Hermes calculates. They have little time. He cannot fight Hera. No one sane seeks open conflict with the Queen of Olympus. But escape may still be possible. He reaches gently toward Io, trying to calm her. His voice remains low, steady, deliberate. He has learned this tone guiding souls. It works on the frightened living as well. Move, he whispers. She obeys. They begin across the valley. Then the punishment comes. Not lightning, not fire, something crueler. A gadfly, tiny, almost laughably small, yet divinely sent. The insect descends like a shard of living torment and strikes Io. She jerks violently. Another sting. Another. Panic explodes through her body. Pain becomes frenzy. She bolts. Hermes lunges after her. Too late. Io runs. Wild, blind, terrified. This is the horror of Hera's punishment. She cannot restore Argus, so she ensures Io's suffering continues. Freedom becomes torment. Motion becomes exile. Hermes runs. His sandals cut through wind, but pursuit becomes difficult because Io no longer moves with reason. She crashes through reeds, riverbanks, rocky slopes, thornbrush. Foam gathers around her mouth. Breath turns ragged. The gadfly follows relentlessly. Ancient interpreters saw deep symbolism here. Pain does not always imprison through chains. Sometimes suffering drives endless motion. One becomes unable to rest, unable to belong, always fleeing invisible torment. Hermes understands the cruelty immediately. This punishment attacks the very thing he governs. Travel, road, movement. Movement without peace becomes suffering. That truth hits him hard. He finally reaches Io near a riverbank. Moonlight glitters across rushing water. She trembles, violently, exhausted eyes wide with hopelessness. Hermes places a hand gently against her neck. He cannot remove Hera's curse. That realization hurts. Because Hermes has grown used to solving problems through cleverness, this one resists. No loophole, no trade, no story, only limitation. He feels frustration rise. Rarely has power felt so insufficient. Io stares at him, human awareness trapped inside mute suffering. Her eyes ask the question she cannot speak. Can you help me? Hermes holds her gaze, and for once, he has no answer. This moment changes him. Until now, Hermes has often succeeded through adaptation. If one path closes, he finds another. But Io teaches him something darker. Some suffering cannot be quickly solved. Some burdens must simply be witnessed. Compassion deepens. He remains with her through the night. The gadfly withdraws for brief intervals before returning. Between attacks, Io shakes with exhaustion. Hermes stays nearby, speaking softly, though she cannot reply. Stories, memories, descriptions of places beyond her reach. Olive groves in morning light, harbour bells at dawn, bread baking in village ovens, spring rain over stone roofs. Why speak such things? Because memory protects identity. Hermes understands that if Io loses memory of human life, Hera wins completely. So he preserves her inner world. This becomes his true rescue. Not body, selfhood. Ancient religious traditions often emphasize this quiet miracle. A guide does more than lead feet. A guide protects meaning. Hermes cannot yet restore Io's form, but he can help preserve who she is. By dawn, Io must move again. Her exile begins. Across lands, across seas, across borders. Some versions of the myth send her wandering through regions later tied to her name. The Ionian Sea, distant coasts, foreign lands. Historians debate how much geography later shaped the myth, but the emotional core remains clear. Io becomes perpetual exile. Hermes walks with her for part of that journey, long enough to witness suffering stripped of drama. Blisters, fatigue, hunger, fear. Days blur into survival. During one rest beneath twisted olive trees, Hermes studies her in silence. He realizes something profound. Mortals endure more than gods often understand. Olympian conflicts create human consequences, yet gods rarely remain long enough to see them. Hermes does. That is why he changes faster than most Olympians. He witnesses aftermath, not just decisions. This makes him wiser. It also makes him lonelier, because wisdom gained through witnessing suffering creates distance from innocence. When Hermes finally returns to Olympus, he is not triumphant. Zeus notices immediately. The king expected success. Instead, he sees complexity. Io lives. Argus is dead. Hera burns with fury, and Hermes carries quiet grief. Zeus asks what happened. Hermes answers plainly. No embellishment, no clever framing. That itself signals growth. Truth can stand unadorned. Zeus listens, says little, perhaps because guilt lingers beneath divine authority. Io's suffering began with his choices. Hermes understands this, though he does not speak it aloud. Some truths need no words. Later, Hermes encounters Apollo. Apollo studies him with unusual seriousness. You failed, Apollo asks. Hermes pauses. An interesting question. Did he fail? Argus is dead. Io escaped captivity. Yet suffering continues. Hermes answers slowly. I solved one problem. He stops. Not the whole wound. Apollo says nothing for a moment. Then he nods. The musician understands incomplete harmony. Some chords remain unresolved. This exchange matters because it deepens their bond. Apollo increasingly respects Hermes not merely for cleverness but for honesty about limits. Limits. Hermes now thinks about them often. Every god has domains, boundaries, powers, restrictions. Even the god of crossings cannot cross everything. That realization tempers pride, and humility, though quiet, begins shaping him. But Olympus offers little time for reflection. Another phase of his life approaches, one less defined by divine politics and more by mortal destiny. Heroes are rising, extraordinary mortals whose fates will reshape legend, and many of them will need something only Hermes can provide. Not brute strength, not prophecy, guidance, tools, timing, a hidden path when all visible roads fail. As twilight settles over Olympus, a strange omen appears. A bronze shield catches dying sunlight and flashes sharply across the courtyard. For a heartbeat, Hermes sees a reflection. A young warrior, sword drawn, facing something monstrous. Then the light vanishes, vision gone. Ancient seers might call it prophecy. Hermes calls it possibility. Somewhere beyond Olympus, a hero's path has begun. And soon, Hermes will step into mortal legend not as messenger of gods, but as silent ally of heroes. By the time heroes begin calling upon him, Hermes is no longer merely the bright child who stole cattle beneath the slopes of Selene. He has crossed Olympus with messages, travelled mortal roads beneath dust and rain, stood beside frightened souls at the edge of death, and watched Io suffer from a wound no cleverness could fully mend. Each journey has left something inside him. Wit remains, but it has deepened. Speed remains, but it has learned discipline. Charm remains, but now carries tenderness. You stand with him at twilight on a high ridge above Greece, where wind moves through dry grass, and the sea glows faintly beyond the hills. Below, mortal fires appear one by one. Each flame belongs to a fragile life. Each life is moving toward a fate it cannot fully see. Hermes watches them with unusual stillness. He has begun to understand mortals differently. They are brief, yes, often foolish, often greedy, yet they are also astonishing. They walk into danger knowing death waits somewhere ahead. Gods rarely understand that kind of courage. A dream comes to him that night. He sees a young man standing before a polished shield, unable to look directly at the monster he must face. Around the hero, shadows coil like snakes. Above him, A winged shape passes through moonlight. Hermes wakes before dawn with the image still burning in his mind. Some traditions would call the dream a prophecy. Others might say it was only divine intuition. But Hermes knows a path is forming. Somewhere a mortal will soon need him. That mortal is Perseus. Perseus is not like the arrogant kings Hermes has delivered warnings to. He is young, pressured by impossible command, drawn into a quest shaped by the vanity and cruelty of others. He must face Medusa, whose gaze turns living beings to stone. The task sounds less like heroism than execution by destiny. Hermes understands the pattern immediately. Mortals are often praised for courage only after being trapped by forces above them. Still, Perseus does not refuse. That interests Hermes. He descends to meet him near a quiet shore where waves break softly against dark rocks. Dawn is pale. Sea wind carries salt and kelp. Perseus stands alone trying to look brave, but Hermes notices the truth beneath posture. Fear, confusion, loneliness. The young hero has been given a monstrous task, but not enough understanding to survive it. Hermes approaches not as overwhelming god, but as guide. The distinction matters. Heroes do not need divine spectacle in every moment. Sometimes they need someone to stand beside them and say there is a way. Hermes gives Perseus what he needs. In some traditions, he provides the curved blade used to strike Medusa. In others, he helps him obtain winged sandals, a pouch, or directions to the Graeae. Details shift across surviving versions, but the emotional truth remains steady. Hermes offers not the victory itself, but the means to attempt it. This reveals something essential about him. He does not replace mortal courage, he equips it. That becomes his pattern with heroes. He opens roads. He does not walk all of them for you. As Perseus prepares, Hermes studies him quietly. He recognizes the fear of thresholds. Perseus stands between childhood and legend, between ordinary life and the impossible demand of myth. Hermes knows thresholds intimately. He knows how terrifying they are. So his guidance is precise, almost gentle. Do not face Medusa directly. Use reflection. Move carefully. Trust what cannot be seen head on. The advice is practical. It is also symbolic. Some truths destroy when faced too directly. Survival sometimes requires indirect vision. Hermes understands this better than most gods because his own nature is indirect. He approaches sideways. He reveals through disguise, metaphor, timing, and reflection. Perhaps that is why Perseus survives. The hero's strength matters, but Hermes' way of seeing saves him first. When Perseus finally departs, Hermes does not glory in the coming kill. He watches the mortal disappear into mist and feels an old unease. Medusa herself is not a simple monster in every tradition. Some tellings remember beauty violation, punishment, exile, and grief behind the terrifying face. Hermes knows by now that divine stories often hide wounds beneath labels. Yet he also knows Perseus must survive. Myth rarely gives clean choices. Gods and heroes move through tangled consequences. This uncertainty stays with him. Somewhere later, when Perseus returns carrying victory and horror together, Hermes understands that heroism always leaves residue. A monster falls. A hero rises, but something ancient and sorrowful remains unhealed. That knowledge keeps Hermes from becoming intoxicated by glory. He assists heroes, but he rarely mistakes glory for peace. Years pass, or perhaps ages. Divine time flows strangely. Another hero emerges different from Perseus in nearly every way. Cunning, weary, full of longing. Odysseus. Here Hermes finds a mortal mind strangely familiar. Odysseus does not overpower the world. He negotiates with it. He lies when needed, speaks beautifully. When trapped, invents escapes when force fails. In him, Hermes sees the human reflection of his own gifts. Not divine speed, but mental agility. Not immortality, but endurance through adaptability. Their relationship becomes one of the quiet jewels of Greek myth. When Odysseus is trapped by Circe, danger is not merely physical. Her island is fragrant with herbs, wine smoke, and enchantment. Men forget themselves there. Companions become animals. Appetite replaces memory. Again, Hermes confronts a familiar threat transformation that steals identity. He remembers Io. He remembers frightened souls. He remembers how easily a being can lose the shape of self. So Hermes appears to Odysseus on the forest path. The air is heavy with the scent of crushed leaves and strange flowers. Birds call from shadowed branches. Somewhere ahead, Circe's halls glow with dangerous welcome. Odysseus walks toward uncertainty, sword at his side, heart divided between courage and dread. Hermes stops him. He offers moly, the mysterious herb, with dark root and pale flower. Ancient traditions treated this plant almost as sacred mystery. Some researchers have tried to identify it. Others believe its meaning is symbolic, not botanical. It is protection through knowledge, a medicine against enchantment, a reminder that the mind must remain rooted while the world tries to reshape it. Hermes warns him carefully. Do not trust appearance. Accept the cup, but resist the spell. Make her swear an oath. These are not the instructions of a warrior god. They are the instructions of a negotiator, a threshold master, a divine survivor of ambiguity. Odysseus listens. Unlike some heroes, he values cunning. That creates trust. Hermes sees in him a mortal who understands that intelligence can be a form of courage. For a god once mocked as mischievous, this recognition matters. Through Odysseus, Hermes' gifts gain heroic dignity. Trickery is no longer childish disruption. It becomes survival. Yet even here, ambiguity remains. Odysseus' cunning saves him, but it also wounds others. His lies protect and manipulate. His brilliance prolongs life and complicates return. Hermes knows this duality well. Perhaps that is why he helps without fully endorsing. He offers tools, not absolution. The friendship between Hermes and heroes is built on this principle. He assists those standing before impossible passages, but he does not erase consequence. Perseus must live with Medusa's death. Odysseus must live with the long cost of his choices. Every hero guided by Hermes must still become responsible for the road taken. This is how Hermes has changed. The infant thief once sought recognition through disruption. The young messenger sought movement through duty. The guide of souls learned compassion. Now he becomes mentor through restraint. He helps without controlling. He advises without possessing. He gives mortals room to become themselves. That is a sacrifice. Gods often prefer worshippers dependent and obedient. Hermes strangely teaches independence. A traveller cannot be carried forever. A hero cannot be guided at every step. At some point, the road belongs to the one walking it. One evening, after aiding Odysseus, Hermes stands alone beside a dark shore. Waves breathe in and out beneath moonlight. His sandals rest lightly on wet sand. In the distance, a ship's mast creaks like an old memory. He thinks of all the mortals he has helped. Some will live, some will die, some will be praised, some will be misunderstood. Was guidance enough? The question remains unresolved. A shooting star crosses the sky, brief and bright. A sign, perhaps, or only fire dying beautifully in darkness. Hermes watches until it fades. He understands now why heroes matter. They are mortal thresholds. Each one stands where fear meets action, where destiny meets choice, where death meets meaning. Hermes does not make them heroic. He helps them cross the moment where they might fail. And soon another kind of crossing will call to him. Not battle, not death, not duty, desire. For even the god of roads, messages and clever escapes cannot move forever without discovering the strange vulnerability of love. For all his speed, all his wit, and all his mastery of movement, there remains one force that even Hermes cannot easily outrun: desire. Not desire for victory, recognition, or clever triumph. He has known those since infancy. This is different, slower, softer, more dangerous precisely because it does not arrive like a storm. It arrives like fragrance carried on warm evening air, subtle enough to ignore until it has already entered your thoughts. You stand with Hermes on Olympus during late afternoon, where golden light spills across marble terraces, and the scent of olive oil, myrrh, and flowering laurel drifts through the palace gardens. Somewhere nearby, laughter rises and fades. Sacred fountains whisper against stone. Everything appears calm, yet calm often hides the beginning of transformation. She enters not with thunder, but with gravity of another kind. Aphrodite. Ancient poets struggled to describe her because beauty in myth is rarely only physical. Aphrodite embodies attraction itself, the invisible force that bends reason, reshapes loyalty, and unsettles identity. To look at her is not merely to admire. It is to feel possibility, longing, memory, and imagination awaken all at once. Hermes notices immediately. Of course he does. He notices everything. Yet this feels unfamiliar. Normally, observation gives him control. He sees patterns, predicts motives, reads openings. But desire resists analysis. Aphrodite smiles, and Hermes feels something profoundly inconvenient. Uncertainty. It irritates him at first. He is used to moving fluidly through conversations, negotiations, conflicts, and disguises. Around Aphrodite, timing slips. Words arrive half a heartbeat late. Thoughts scatter. For a god defined by quickness, that delay feels almost humiliating. Aphrodite notices. She notices because she too understands attention. Their early exchanges carry playful tension. Hermes approaches through wit. Aphrodite responds with effortless poise. He tests charm. She bends charm back toward him. He offers layered compliments. She answers with questions that reveal more than they conceal. It becomes a game, a dangerous one. But unlike his earlier games, this one lacks clear rules. That unsettles him. Ancient storytellers often treated the relationship between Hermes and Aphrodite with unusual subtlety. Unlike explosive divine affairs driven by conquest or obsession, theirs often carries mutual curiosity. They are both powers of connection. Aphrodite governs attraction. Hermes governs exchange. Together they create movement of desire. And movement always changes things. One evening, Hermes finds Aphrodite alone in a garden overlooking the mortal world. Twilight paints the horizon in amber and violet. The sea below reflects fading light like molten bronze. Olive trees sway in warm wind. She does not turn immediately when he arrives. "You travel often," she says. Not accusation, observation. Hermes smiles. "I return often." Aphrodite finally looks at him. Returning is not the same as staying. The words strike deeper than he expects. Because they touch the truth he avoids. Hermes can arrive anywhere. Remaining is harder. This becomes the emotional center of their connection. Aphrodite sees through motion. She recognizes that constant movement can become avoidance. Not merely freedom. Avoidance. Avoidance of stillness. Avoidance of attachment. Avoidance of being known too deeply. Hermes feels exposed. And exposure frightens him more than monsters ever did. Argus watched his body. Aphrodite begins seeing his interior. That is more dangerous. Their bond deepens gradually. Not through spectacle, but presence, shared conversations, quiet evenings, small moments between larger duties. Hermes discovers something strange about love. Love slows perception, not by dulling it, by deepening it. He begins noticing things he once passed too quickly. The warmth of skin after sunset, the faint scent of rose oil in moving air, the softness of silence between spoken words. His senses, once optimized for speed, begin discovering value in pause. This change surprises him. Even Apollo notices. During one gathering, Apollo studies Hermes with mild amusement. "You are quieter." Hermes answers lightly. "Maybe you are louder." Apollo almost smiles, but he understands. Something is changing. The trickster is learning stillness, at least partly. Yet love does not simplify Hermes' life. It complicates it, because his duties remain relentless. Messages continue. Souls still need guidance, travelers still pray, heroes still call. Movement does not stop, and herein lies the central tension. How does a god of roads sustain intimacy? Aphrodite feels the strain too. She knows desire draws beings together, but desire alone cannot preserve connection. Presence matters, attention matters, time matters. Hermes struggles with all three. Sometimes he vanishes for days crossing worlds. Sometimes he returns carrying exhaustion from the underworld. Sometimes his mind remains half on the next journey. Aphrodite notices every fracture. She says little, but silence acquires weight. Hermes feels something unfamiliar growing inside him. Fear. Not fear of battle, not fear of failure, fear of disappointing someone he loves. This fear reshapes him. Ancient myths rarely frame Hermes as emotionally vulnerable, yet this relationship reveals exactly that. Love introduces a form of accountability different from duty. Zeus commands responsibility. Love invites responsibility freely chosen. That choice matters. Hermes begins trying, truly trying. He returns sooner, listens longer, speaks less defensively. These may sound small, but for Hermes they are profound sacrifices, because attention is his rarest currency. To stay mentally present means resisting the pull of endless roads. This is love as discipline, not merely passion. Their union eventually bears consequence. From their connection emerges Hermaphroditus, a child, whose later myth becomes deeply symbolic. Ancient interpretations vary widely, but one theme persists: union beyond binary separation. Boundaries blur, masculine and feminine merge, identity becomes fluid. No child could reflect Hermes more symbolically. Threshold, transformation, betweenness. Even in fatherhood, Hermes confronts his own nature mirrored outward. That realization humbles him. He sees how his essence continues through others, not through imitation, but through complexity. Yet not all consequences of love are gentle. Aphrodite, goddess of desire, belongs to no simple story. Many forces orbit her admiration: rivalry, jealousy, longing. Hermes understands that love never removes ambiguity. If anything, it intensifies it. One night, after returning from guiding souls, Hermes finds Aphrodite asleep beneath soft lamplight. Gold flame flickers across marble walls. The scent of incense hangs warm and faint. He stops. Still, no movement, no speech, just observation. Something unexpected happens. He realizes peace feels frightening. Why? Because peace invites vulnerability. Motion protects him. Stillness reveals him. This may be the deepest psychological truth of Hermes' life. The god who governs movement often moves to avoid being fully seen. Love interrupts that strategy. Aphrodite opens her eyes. She notices him standing there. "Why are you afraid?" she asks softly. Hermes almost answers with humor. Almost. But not tonight. After a long silence, he speaks truth. "If I stay..." He stops, then finishes. "Someone can leave." The confession hangs in warm air. At last, the core wound emerges. Hermes fears attachment because attachment creates loss. Every road teaches departure. Every arrival contains future separation. Aphrodite rises slowly and steps toward him. No argument, no lecture, only presence. "You guide others through endings," she says. "Who guides you?" Hermes has no answer. Perhaps because none exists, or perhaps because the answer has just spoken. Ancient traditions preserved these quieter emotional truths because they understood something essential. Even gods embody human fears. Hermes' deepest fear is not confinement, it is abandonment. That realization changes how you see him. Restlessness becomes more than playful energy. It becomes defense. And love begins dissolving that defense. Not completely. Hermes will never become a god of stillness, but he learns something precious. Stillness need not mean imprisonment. Sometimes it means trust. Far below, Olympus, night deepens across mortal lands. Lovers whisper, families sleep, sailors watch stars, messengers travel roads by torchlight. Hermes feels the pull of movement again. Duty calls. It always does. But now departure feels different because return matters to someone. That changes the meaning of every road, yet destiny still has more mirrors to place before him. Soon, he will face fatherhood more fully through children stranger than most myths can easily explain. And through them, Hermes will confront the wildest parts of his own divided soul. In the long life of a god, there are moments when you stop seeing yourself as the center of movement and begin seeing your nature reflected in others. For Hermes, that realization comes not through battle, not through prophecy, and not through divine politics, but through fatherhood. By now, he has become many things. messenger of Olympus, guide of souls, ally of heroes, patron of roads, merchants, travellers and thieves. He has learned duty, restraint, grief and love, yet no lesson unsettles him, quite like seeing parts of himself reborn in forms he cannot control. You stand beside him at dawn in a high meadow where mist curls over grass and the scent of wet earth rises into cool air. Somewhere in the distance, goats move over rocky slopes. A flute echoes faintly from unseen hills. The sound feels playful, wild, and slightly unsettling. Hermes pauses. He knows that sound. It belongs to Pan. Among Hermes' children, Pan may be the most startling reflection of instincts Hermes rarely shows openly. Ancient descriptions of Pan vary, but the central image remains unforgettable. Horned, goat-legged, untamed, laughing, terrifying, musical, primal. When Pan was born, some traditions say even his mother recoiled in fear at his strange appearance. Hermes did not. Hermes laughed, not mockingly, joyfully, because where others saw deformity, Hermes saw truth without disguise. Pan represents appetite without shame, wildness without apology, instinct without polished civility. The forests, mountains, caves, and lonely pastures belong to him. He is not Olympus refined into marble symmetry. He is nature before architecture. Hermes understands immediately why Pan matters. Pan is not his opposite. Pan is his raw root. Everything Hermes refined into wit and social grace survives in Pan as primal force. Cunning becomes instinct. Music becomes raw sound. Desire becomes hunger. Motion becomes animal freedom. This realization unsettles Hermes. Because Pan reveals what civilization often hides. Intelligence evolved from wildness. Order emerged from instinct. The polished messenger of Olympus still carries ancient wilderness inside. That truth becomes harder to ignore whenever Pan appears. One afternoon, Hermes visits a forest clearing, where Pan sits beneath twisted pine carving reeds into pipes. Sunlight filters through branches in broken gold patterns. Resin scents the air. Cicadas hum. Pan barely looks up. "You walk too much," Pan says. Hermes smiles. "You sit too little." Pan snorts, then laughs. Their conversations often move like this, half playful, half piercing. Pan lacks Olympus politeness. He speaks directly, often uncomfortably so. Hermes finds this irritating and strangely refreshing. Pan sees through performance. That alone makes him dangerous to Hermes. Unlike Apollo or Aphrodite, Pan does not analyze or seduce. He simply perceives instinctively. He senses when Hermes hides behind charm. That means Pan often voices truths others avoid. "You fear silence," Pan says once while playing soft notes through reed pipes. Hermes gives the expected answer. "I speak for a living." Pan shakes his head. "No, you run for a living." The forest suddenly feels quieter. Hermes says nothing, because the words land. Pan has named what Hermes spent ages avoiding: restlessness as escape, motion as defense. Ancient myths often encoded psychological inheritance through divine children. Children do not merely continue lineage, they expose unresolved truths in parents. Pan does this relentlessly. Yet Pan is not Hermes' only strange mirror. Another child reveals a different reflection entirely. Hermaphroditus carries perhaps the most symbolically complex legacy of Hermes and Aphrodite. Ancient traditions surrounding him vary greatly and were interpreted differently across eras, but one core theme survives: union beyond simple categories. Boundaries dissolve, forms merge, identity becomes layered. For Hermes, this is deeply significant. No god understands thresholds better than he does. Yet here, the threshold is no road, no gate, no crossing between worlds. It is identity itself. Hermaphroditus forces Hermes to confront a profound truth. Not all boundaries are meant to remain fixed. Some are porous, some transform, some dissolve into new forms. This challenges the Greek desire for clean classification: male and female, mortal and divine, truth and lie, beginning and ending. Hermes has always lived between categories. Through Hermaphroditus, that in-between nature becomes embodied more visibly than ever. Some researchers believe later philosophical traditions found deep symbolic meaning here, seeing in Hermes' lineage the mystery of integration, the joining of opposites into something new. Whether ancient worshippers articulated it so directly remains debated, but myth preserves the intuition. Hermes belongs to liminality, and his children prove it. Fatherhood changes him in quieter ways too. He becomes more observant of consequences extending beyond immediate actions. Earlier in life, Hermes moved quickly, adapting in the present. Children alter temporal awareness. Suddenly, choices echo forward into lives beyond your own. This introduces responsibility of another kind. Legacy. What does Hermes pass down? Cunning, adaptability, charm, restlessness, wisdom, avoidance. All of it, perhaps. That complexity weighs on him. One evening, Hermes returns to Olympus after a long circuit through mortal cities and the underworld. He finds himself unusually exhausted. The palace glows under torchlight. Bronze reflects warm fire. Distant music drifts through open halls. Aphrodite sits quietly nearby. She studies him without speaking. She has learned that silence often reveals more than questions. At last, Hermes speaks. Do children inherit gifts, he asks, or wounds? Aphrodite considers, then answers with unsettling calm. Both. The simplicity of the answer strikes him, because he knows it is true. Pan inherits vitality and wildness, but also isolation from polished society. Hermaphroditus inherits union, but also complexity that others struggle to understand. Hermes sees in them brilliance and burden intertwined. Legacy is never clean. Ancient audiences likely recognize this immediately. Inheritance rarely passes only blessings. Every gift carries shadow. Hermes begins reflecting on his own inheritance from Zeus. Brilliance, charm, strategic intelligence, also distance, complication, instability. His father gave power, but not always emotional steadiness. The pattern continues. Generations carry unfinished stories. This realization deepens Hermes' empathy toward mortals. Families repeat wounds. Children reinterpret parents. Identity emerges through inheritance and resistance alike. Gods are not so different. One twilight, Hermes visits Maya again. The old cave smells of smokestone and time, exactly as it did at his birth. Time feels strangely circular here. Maya watches him carefully. You think too much, she says. Hermes laughs softly. That sounds like something Apollo would say. No, Maya replies. Apollo thinks to understand. You think to escape feeling. The words hit with familiar force. Mother and son share one rare gift. They recognize hidden motion. Hermes lowers his gaze. Even now, after all his journeys, Maya sees what others miss. That comfort brings grief too, because every return reminds him of what he cannot keep. Nothing remains unchanged, not even home. Outside the cave, dusk settles. Crickets begin singing. Cool mountain air moves through pine branches. Hermes listens, and he notices something. For once, he does not feel pulled immediately toward the next road. He simply sits, breathes, listens. A small but meaningful shift. Fatherhood, love, duty, grief together, they are changing him. Not into stillness, but into greater awareness of why movement happens. Movement is not always escape. Sometimes movement is service, sometimes return, sometimes inheritance, sometimes healing. Yet even as wisdom deepens, another burden grows. Hermes now carries countless secrets. From gods, from heroes, from lovers, from souls, from children. Secrets layered upon secrets, and secrets left unspoken too long become heavy. Soon, Hermes will confront a different kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of roads, the loneliness of knowing too much. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from isolation, but from proximity. You can stand among gods, walk through crowded markets, hear thousands of voices, and still feel profoundly alone if you carry truths no one else can fully share. By this stage of his long existence, Hermes has become exactly that kind of being. He moves constantly through lives, yet belongs completely to none. He knows what kings whisper behind closed doors. He knows what heroes confess only in exhaustion. He knows which vows are sincere and which promises will break before sunrise. He knows the final regrets of the dying, and the private fears of immortals who pretend to fear nothing. Knowledge surrounds him like invisible armor, but armor, however useful, still creates distance. Olympus feels unusually bright that morning. Marble columns shine under hard sunlight. Sacred fires burn steady. Golden vessels reflect light so sharply they almost hurt the eyes. Yet Hermes feels none of the brightness internally. He has returned from many journeys carrying too much, too many last words, too many hidden motives, too many truths that cannot be spoken aloud. Ancient worshippers often celebrated Hermes as patron of communication, but myths quietly reveal a painful irony. The god of messages cannot share everything he knows. Communication and secrecy grow together. The more messages you carry, the more silence you must protect. This becomes his next burden. It begins with something seemingly ordinary. Zeus sends Hermes to deliver private words to Hera. The message concerns divine politics, alliances, tensions, promises, matters Olympus treats seriously. Hermes delivers the message flawlessly, but as he watches Hera receive it, he notices something unsettling. She already suspects more than the message says. A pause, a narrowed gaze, a question left unspoken. Hermes recognizes the danger immediately. She wants more, not openly, subtly. Her tone remains calm. What else did Zeus say? A simple question, yet layered. Hermes understands that one extra sentence could alter relationships across Olympus. A messenger's greatest temptation is often not lying, but revealing slightly too much. He answers carefully. Nothing beyond what was given. True, precise, incomplete. Hera studies him. For a long moment, silence stretches. Then she nods. Conversation ends, but Hermes leaves carrying the familiar weight of restraint. He protected trust, yet trust often feels heavy because silence can resemble betrayal to those denied knowledge. This pattern repeats endlessly. Apollo asks about Zeus's intentions. Athena tests for strategic nuance. Aphrodite senses emotional truths hidden beneath spoken words. Mortals plead for omens. Priests beg for certainty. Lovers ask whether feelings are returned. Kings demand intelligence about rivals. Everyone wants more. Hermes cannot satisfy them. That impossibility exhausts him. One night, after guiding souls to the underworld, he pauses near the banks of the dark river, where Charon waits in eternal silence. The air is cold, dry, and almost scentless. Even sound feels thin here. Hermes speaks first. Rare for him. Do you ever tire of silence? Charon does not answer immediately. Then, quietly, silence weighs less than words. Hermes stands still. The statement unsettles him, because part of him knows it is true. Words create obligations, promises, interpretations, consequences. Silence can wound, but words can fracture worlds. This deepens Hermes' internal conflict. He loves language. He understands rhetoric better than nearly any god. Yet he increasingly sees language as dangerous. A single phrase can ignite war. A confession can destroy peace. A secret revealed too early can ruin futures. Ancient philosophers later associated Hermes with interpretation, precisely because meaning is never fixed. Every message changes as it moves from speaker to listener. Hermes experiences this constantly. He carries intention, but reception always reshapes it. This makes certainty feel fragile, and fragile certainty creates loneliness. Because Hermes rarely speaks from pure innocence anymore, he always hears layers, subtext, motive, hidden fear, unspoken desire. Once you learn to read beneath words, conversation changes forever. This becomes especially painful with Aphrodite. Their relationship has deepened, but intimacy complicates secrecy. Aphrodite notices emotional shifts before Hermes speaks. She senses when something burdens him. One evening, she finds him standing alone on a terrace overlooking the mortal world. Night wind carries jasmine and sea salt. Below, distant towns glow like scattered embers. She approaches quietly. "You're far away," she says. Hermes gives a familiar half smile. "I'm here." Aphrodite shakes her head. "No, you're carrying somewhere else." The accuracy hurts because she is right. Hermes wants to speak, truly speak, to unload everything, to describe grief, secrets, confessions, betrayals, last words. But he cannot, not because he lacks trust, because trust itself prevents disclosure. That paradox cuts deeply. Love invites openness. Duty requires restraint. He lives between both. At last, he says something dangerously honest. I know too much. Aphrodite studies him. And Hermes exhales. It becomes harder to simply be with people when you hear everything beneath what they say. Silence follows. Then Aphrodite answers with quiet precision. Maybe you confuse understanding with responsibility. Hermes turns toward her. The words land hard, because he does. He carries knowledge and instinctively feels responsible for outcomes. If he sees deception, must he intervene? If he anticipates suffering, must he prevent it? If he knows a truth, must he reveal it? The burden becomes endless. Aphrodite continues. You are a guide, Hermes, not the author of every story. Something shifts inside him, small, but real. Ancient myths often hide wisdom in intimate exchanges. Here, Hermes confronts a central flaw. His intelligence tempts him toward over-responsibility. Seeing patterns creates illusion of control, but understanding a road does not mean owning every traveler's choices. This realization loosens something, not completely, but enough. Soon, another event tests this insight. Hermes delivers messages to a mortal king whose son secretly plans rebellion. Hermes sees the signs instantly: hesitation in speech, guard placements, hidden weapons, tension among servants. He knows rebellion is coming. He could warn the king. He could intervene. He does not. This choice troubles him. Why remain silent? Because he recognizes a difficult truth. Some conflicts must unfold. Not every painful outcome can or should be prevented. Growth often emerges through consequence. The rebellion comes. Blood is shed but not catastrophe. Father and son survive. Hard truths emerge. A broken relationship begins painful repair. Hermes watches from distance. For once, he does not interfere. And he learns. Restraint is not always neglect. Sometimes restraint is wisdom. This lesson matures him profoundly. The infant thief once acted instantly. The messenger learned duty. The psychopomp learned compassion. Now Hermes learns discernment, knowing when not to act. That may be his hardest lesson yet. Still, the burden of secrets remains. One strange omen intensifies this theme. While traveling at dusk through a mountain pass, Hermes hears an echo of his own voice behind him. He stops. No one visible. Then the echo speaks again, not repeating his words, whispering. Fragments of messages, old confessions, last words from the dead, promises from lovers, threats from kings, secrets, all at once. Wind rushes through stone. Hermes grips his staff. Ancient traditions preserve strange auditory omens like this to symbolize psychic strain. Whether literal spirit or mythic metaphor hardly matters. The meaning is clear. Secrets accumulate. They do not vanish simply because they remain unspoken. They live inside the keeper. Hermes finally understands the cost of becoming indispensable. Everyone trusts him with passage. But who receives what he carries? The question lingers unanswered. When he returns to Olympus, even its brilliance cannot fully warm him. He walks the halls quieter than before. Gods greet him. Priests pray to him. Travelers whisper his name. Yet internally, he feels the growing paradox of his life. He is known everywhere, fully understood nowhere. This realization deepens the loneliness already growing within him. And soon, that loneliness will confront its sharpest form. Because a god who belongs to every road must eventually face one painful truth. What if belonging everywhere means belonging nowhere at all? There comes a moment in long journeys when motion itself no longer feels like freedom. It becomes rhythm, habit, identity. By now Hermes has spent ages crossing worlds. Olympus' mortal lands, crossroads, battlefields, markets, shrines, caves, and the silent borders of the underworld. His sandals still answer instantly to thought. His staff still opens passage where others hesitate. His voice still carries the power to soothe, persuade, negotiate, or warn. From the outside, he appears perfectly suited to his role. Swift, adaptable, necessary. Yet beneath that graceful motion, a quiet fracture has begun widening. You stand beside him high above the mortal world as evening settles over Greece. Clouds glow amber, then crimson, then violet. Harbour fires appear along dark coastlines. Temple smoke rises in pale ribbons. Somewhere below a child is born. Somewhere else a sailor drowns. Somewhere lovers reunite. Somewhere a family grieves. Hermes feels all of it as threads pulling in different directions. And for the first time in ages, he feels tired in a way speed cannot solve. Not physical fatigue, existential fatigue, a weariness of perpetual in-between. Ancient thinkers might call this liminality, though they would not use the modern word. Hermes exists between categories so completely that category itself begins losing meaning. He is divine, yet deeply shaped by mortal experience. He belongs to Olympus, yet spends much of existence away from it. He carries messages, yet cannot fully share himself. He guides journeys, yet struggles to define home. This contradiction reaches a quiet crisis. It begins with something simple, a delayed return. After weeks of travel through mortal lands and repeated descents to the underworld, Hermes returns to Olympus later than expected. No divine punishment waits, no crisis, no urgent summons. The palace glows peacefully under starlight. Music drifts through open halls. Sacred fires burn low. Everything is calm. Yet Hermes stops at the entrance and hesitates. The hesitation surprises him. Why hesitate before home? Then the unsettling answer emerges. Because Olympus no longer feels entirely like home. He enters slowly. The marble feels familiar but distant. Voices of gods echo through corridors. Laughter rises from banquet halls. The scent of wine incense, roasted meat and perfumed oil hangs warm in the air. Once this place felt like arrival. Now it feels like another stop, not destination. That realization lands heavily. He has spent so long moving between worlds that stillness itself feels foreign. Later that night, he visits Apollo. Apollo sits beneath a lamplight with the lyre, Hermes' first great creation, resting across his lap. Music fills the chamber in slow, luminous waves. Hermes listens. Apollo eventually stops. "You're restless," Apollo says. Hermes almost laughs. That is hardly new. Apollo studies him carefully. "No, this is different." Silence stretches. Then Apollo says what Hermes has avoided admitting. "You no longer know where you belong." The words land with brutal clarity, because they are true. Hermes lowers his gaze. Apollo continues, voice calm. "You live between worlds so often that each world becomes partial." Hermes finally answers, "And what if partial becomes permanent?" Apollo says nothing immediately. Then he plucks a single note. It vibrates softly through the room. Harmony, Apollo says, is not created by identical notes. Another note, different pitch, different tension, belonging to more than one place, may not be absence. A pause. It may be composition. Hermes listens. The idea unsettles him because it challenges his grief. He has been treating divided belonging as loss. Apollo suggests it may be identity. Still, acceptance does not come easily, because emotional truth resists elegant philosophy. Soon after Hermes visits Maya, the mountain cave remains the closest thing to origin he knows. Cool stone, moss, smoke, time, pine wind moving softly outside. The same cave where he first opened his eyes. If anywhere feels like root, it is here. Yet even here, something has changed. Not the cave, him. He sits near the sacred fire. Long silence. Then Maya asks the question no one else has dared ask. If you could stop moving, would you? Hermes stares into flame. The fire crackles softly. He expects immediate answer. None comes. That frightens him. At last he speaks. I don't know. The honesty feels raw. Maya nods gently. Because uncertainty itself is revelation. For the first time, Hermes recognizes a truth hidden beneath all previous restlessness. Movement began as joy, then became identity, then duty, then defense. Somewhere along the way, he stopped distinguishing between desire and compulsion. Does he travel because he loves roads, or because stillness forces confrontation? The question lingers like smoke. Ancient myths often preserve psychological truths. Through symbolic spaces and caves frequently represent interior descent. Here, returning to birthplace becomes confrontation with self. Hermes faces his deepest paradox. He helps others cross thresholds, yet resists his own inner threshold. That threshold is simple to name: self-acceptance. Can he accept being permanently in between? Not half of things. Fully both, divine and worldly. Messenger and secret keeper. Trickster and guide. Freedom and responsibility. Motion and return. This realization slowly softens something inside him. Perhaps belonging was never meant to mean singular attachment. Perhaps his nature was never broken, only complex. That thought brings unexpected peace. Not complete peace, but enough to breathe differently. Soon, another encounter deepens this shift. Hermes stands at a busy crossroads shrine at dusk. Traders pass with donkeys. Children chase each other through dust. A widow leaves oil at a herm. A young traveller kneels and whispers a prayer. Hermes listens. The prayer is simple. Help me find my way. No request for wealth. No request for victory. Just direction. Hermes watches the traveller rise and continue down uncertain road. Something clicks. Suddenly he understands why mortals love him so deeply. Because most lives are lived between certainties. Few people dwell permanently in triumph, clarity, or peace. Most live in transitions, between youth and age, hope and grief, love and loss, departure and return. Humans are threshold creatures. Just like him, that recognition changes everything. His in-between nature stops feeling like exile. It begins feeling like kinship. He is not separated from mortals by his liminality. He is connected to them through it. This insight transforms loneliness into purpose, not fully, but profoundly. That night under star-filled sky, Hermes stands alone at the crossroads. Wind moves through olive branches, torchlight flickers. Somewhere far off, wolves call across hills. Then a dreamlike omen appears. For a heartbeat, every road glowing from the shrine becomes visible at once. Thousands, millions, roads of merchants, soldiers, children, widows, kings, beggars, lovers, exiles. Roads of birth, roads of death, roads of choice, roads of regret. All shining, all moving, all crossing. And at every crossing, Hermes, not trapped, present, guiding, witnessing. The vision fades, but peace remains. He finally understands. Home was never a single place. Home is the crossing itself, the road, the threshold, the moment of transition where fear meets movement. That is where he lives. That is where he belongs. Yet this realization arrives just before another transformation, because identity may now feel clearer, but legacy is still unfolding. Hermes' influence will soon expand beyond gods and heroes into something even larger. Civilization itself. Cities are rising, trade is expanding, markets are growing, and the god of roads is about to become the god of exchange on a scale no Olympian yet fully understands. As centuries pass, the world beneath Olympus begins to change. Not suddenly, but steadily, like a shoreline reshaped by countless small waves. Villages grow into towns, towns harden into cities, dirt paths widen into trade roads worn smooth by wheels, sandals and hooves. Harbours expand, markets swell with voices from distant lands. Olive oil travels farther, wine crosses seas, bronze grain, wool, salt pottery and stories move from hand to hand with increasing speed. And with every exchange, the presence of Hermes grows stronger. You stand beside him above a bustling marketplace at dawn. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Donkeys bray, coins clink. Fishmongers shout prices over baskets of silver-scaled catch. Bakers pull warm bread from ovens, and the smell of wheat and sesame drifts through cool morning air. Everywhere you look, something is moving. Goods, money, words, trust, deception, desire, negotiation. Hermes watches in silence, and slowly he realizes something profound. Roads no longer connect only places. They connect economies, ambitions, and entire civilizations. This changes his role. Until now, Hermes has been deeply personal in worship. Travelers prayed to him before journeys. Thieves invoked him before risks. Heroes sought him at thresholds. But cities introduced scale. Thousands now depend on systems of exchange. Markets become organized expressions of trust and suspicion balanced together. Trade requires something fragile belief. Two strangers must believe value can pass fairly between them. That belief is never guaranteed. Hermes understands this instantly, because trust and uncertainty have always defined his domain. Ancient Greeks increasingly associate Hermes with commerce not merely because merchants travel, but because trade itself resembles communication. A coin is a message, a contract is a message, a handshake is a message. Price, value, reputation all depend on shared meaning. Hermes becomes indispensable. You follow him through a crowded agora, where traders from distant islands argue over amphorae and metal weights. He sees what others miss. A merchant subtly adjusting scales. A buyer pretending indifference to lower price. A ship captain calculating risk from weather reports. A banker assessing trustworthiness from body language alone. No one says everything openly. Exchange lives in implication. This makes the marketplace one of Hermes' purest temples. Not because it is holy in the traditional sense, because it reveals human nature, ambition, fear, greed, hope, cooperation, deception. Every transaction becomes a small negotiation between trust and risk. Hermes feels strangely at home, more than in Olympus. That realization surprises him less than it once would have. He now understands that his deepest affinity lies not with static perfection, but with dynamic tension. Markets breathe like living organisms. They pulse with uncertainty. They reward observation, timing, adaptation. In short, they think like Hermes. This new era changes worship practices as well. Shrines to Hermes multiply near city gates, warehouses, docks, and market roads. Merchants rub statues before opening stalls. Caravans leave offerings before long journeys. Contracts are sworn in his name. Even coinage begins carrying symbolic associations linked to movement and exchange. Some researchers believe this shift reflected growing economic sophistication in Greek society. As commerce expanded, Hermes evolved from local protector of roads into a broader symbol of circulation itself. Wealth moving through systems became sacred to him, but growth brings shadow. The more wealth moves, the more greed grows. Hermes sees this immediately. One morning, he watches a grain merchant dilute supplies during famine. The deception is subtle, profitable, cruel. Nearby children wait for food. Their mother counts coins with trembling hands. Hermes feels anger rise. Not theatrical rage. Cold anger. Because cleverness used against desperation disgusts him, he steps into the scene disguised as an ordinary buyer. Calm questions expose inconsistencies. Measurements fail inspection. The fraud collapses publicly. Shame spreads. The merchant stammers. The crowd shifts. Truth emerges. Hermes says little. He does not punish through force. He restores balance through exposure. This becomes another aspect of his urban role. Guardian of fair exchange. Not because trade must be perfect, because systems collapse when trust dies completely. This lesson matters deeply. Ancient civilizations often depended less on written enforcement than reputation. Once trust vanished, markets destabilized. Hermes becomes symbolic protector of the invisible fabric holding commerce together. Yet he never becomes naive. He knows deception cannot disappear. He himself embodies cunning. That paradox remains central. Unlike gods who demand purity, Hermes accepts complexity. He understands that negotiation always contains strategy. Profit itself is not evil. Cleverness is not corruption. The question is intent. Does intelligence create mutual gain or exploit vulnerability? This moral distinction grows increasingly important. One evening, Hermes walks through a harbour city after rain. Stone streets glisten under torchlight. Salt air mixes with wet wood and tar. Sailors unload cargo from foreign ships. Languages blend in overlapping sound. He pauses near a conversation between two traders from distant lands who share no common native tongue. Yet somehow, they negotiate, gesture, tone, numbers scratched in wax, fragments of borrowed words. Agreement emerges. Hermes smiles. This moment fascinates him. Communication does not require perfect sameness. Meaning can be built through effort. Ancient philosophers later found deep symbolism in Hermes here. He governs translation not only between languages, but between systems of understanding. He enables exchange across difference. That makes civilization possible. Without translation, trade stalls. Without interpretation, cooperation fractures. Hermes increasingly becomes patron not only of merchants but of interpreters, diplomats, scribes and negotiators. His domain expands beyond Rhodes into cognition itself. This expansion changes how other gods view him. Athena grows especially attentive. She sees something emerging that few others fully grasp. Hermes is no longer simply moving messages. He is shaping systems through which information flows. One day, Athena joins him overlooking a busy city. She speaks without ceremony. Power is changing. Hermes glances toward her. How? Athena watches the marketplace below. Kings once controlled land. She pauses. Soon, those who control information and exchange will rival kings. Hermes says nothing, because he knows she is right. The statement feels almost prophetic. Athena continues, "You move information faster than anyone." Then she looks directly at him. "Be careful." The warning lingers. Hermes understands immediately. Influence has grown quietly. No throne, no army, no temple empire. Yet countless systems now depend on movement he governs. Roads, markets, messages, contract, trust. The realization is sobering. Power does not always announce itself through force. Sometimes it accumulates invisibly. This recognition deepens his sense of responsibility once again. He remembers Aphrodite's words, "Guide, not author." That wisdom becomes essential. Hermes must resist controlling systems simply because he understands them. Influence without humility becomes manipulation. He knows that temptation all too well. One strange event crystallizes this truth. A wealthy trader offers a lavish sacrifice asking Hermes for monopoly over a key trade route. Wealth, beyond measure, is promised in return for exclusive advantage. The request is clever, profitable, strategic, also dangerous. Hermes refuses, quietly, without spectacle, because monopoly freezes movement, and frozen movement contradicts his nature. Hermes does not serve hoarding, he serves circulation. That distinction becomes foundational. Wealth trapped becomes stagnation. Wealth moving creates life. Ancient economic symbolism often echoed this insight. Flow matters more than accumulation. The god of Rhodes values circulation, not possession. This understanding brings unexpected peace. For all the complexity of cities, the core truth remains familiar. Movement sustains life. Whether souls crossing into death, heroes crossing danger, or merchants crossing seas, the principle remains. Flow, exchange, passage. Yet even as cities embrace him, another symbol begins rising across Greece. Simple, stone, unmoving, and paradoxically, these still objects will define Hermes' memory for centuries. The Hermes, stone markers at crossroads, silent guardians of movement. Soon Hermes' face will stand wherever journeys begin, and through these strange pillars, his presence will become visible even in stillness. As cities grow and roads multiply, something curious begins happening across Greece. The more movement shapes civilization, the more people feel the need to mark still points within that movement. Travelers want signs, merchants want boundaries, families want protection at thresholds where safety gives way to uncertainty. And so across dusty roads, village entrances harbour paths, mountain passes and market streets, stone pillars begin to rise. Simple at first, rough-cut blocks placed beside crossroads. Later, more carefully carved markers bearing the face of Hermes. These sacred markers, known as Hermes, become one of the most enduring symbols of his worship. You stand beside one at dawn. Morning mist clings low over the road. Dew wets wild grass. A wagon creaks in the distance. Someone has left fresh olives and a small cup of oil at the base of the pillar. The stone is cold to the touch, worn smooth where countless hands have rested in prayer. and Hermes watching feels something unexpectedly profound. He, the god of motion, is being remembered through stillness. The irony does not escape him. Ancient worshippers understood symbols better than many later generations. A Herm was not merely a statue, it was a threshold marker, a declaration that one space ended and another began. Village to wilderness, safety to uncertainty, home to journey, known to unknown. Hermes recognizes why this matters. Thresholds have always defined him, but now for the first time, his presence becomes anchored in physical form, not moving, waiting, guarding. This unsettles and fascinates him. One morning, he watches a young traveler approach a Herm before leaving home for the first time. The boy carries a small pack, cheap sandals, nervous posture. His mother stands behind him, trying not to cry. The boy touches the stone and whispers a prayer. Not elaborate, just honest. Help me return. Hermes feels the words deeply, because they reveal something simple and universal. Most prayers at crossroads are not about adventure. They are about return. Humans fear departure less than uncertain return. This realization reshapes how Hermes sees his own worship. People do not ask him merely for movement. They ask him for safe passage through uncertainty. Passage with continuity of self. That matters, because roads change people, sometimes subtly, sometimes forever. The Herm becomes a promise. You may leave, you may change, but perhaps you can still return. This symbolism spreads rapidly. At village gates, Herms protect communities. At market entrances, they bless exchange. Outside homes, they guard domestic thresholds. Near ports, sailors touch them before boarding ships. Even soldiers departing for war pause beside them. Hermes sees every gesture. Each one teaches him something about fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of transformation, fear of not coming back the same. Ancient Greeks often treated boundaries as spiritually charged spaces. Crossroads especially carried mystery. Choices become visible there. Multiple futures branch outward. To stand at a crossroads is to confront possibility. Hermes belongs naturally there, not because he chooses paths for mortals, because he witnesses choice. That distinction matters. One evening at a rural crossroads beneath cypress trees, Hermes observes 3 travelers arriving almost together. A merchant, a soldier, a widow. Each stops before the Herm. Each offers prayer. The merchant asks for profit. The soldier asks for survival. The widow asks for courage to continue alone. Same God, 3 radically different needs. Hermes feels something profound. He has become a mirror. People approach him carrying their deepest anxieties, and his symbolism bends around those needs. To the ambitious, he becomes opportunity. To the fearful, protection. To the grieving, companionship. To the lost, direction. This versatility explains his enduring popularity. He is adaptable because thresholds themselves are universal. Yet stillness continues teaching him. At first, Hermes disliked the idea of stone representation. Stone felt fixed, predictable, opposite of movement. But watching Hermes over time changes his understanding. Stillness does not oppose movement. Stillness gives movement orientation. A road without markers becomes confusion. A journey needs reference points. This insight lands with unusual force. He thinks of his own life. For ages, he resisted stillness, fearing it meant confinement. Now stone markers teach him another truth. Stillness can provide meaning. A pause can guide motion. A boundary can clarify freedom. This wisdom matures him further. Not all pauses are prisons. Some are anchors. Athena later reinforces this lesson during a quiet conversation in Athens. Marble glows white under noon light. Craftsmen shape stone nearby. The city hums with energy. Athena touches a newly carved Herm. Interesting, she says. Hermes glances at her. What is? She smiles faintly. The god of motion becoming symbol of orientation. Hermes laughs softly. Even you enjoy irony. Athena's gaze remains calm. No irony, necessity. She looks toward the city roads. Movement without orientation becomes chaos. Then, at Hermes, your stillness gives meaning to your motion. The statement lingers, because it applies beyond stone. Hermes understands. Stillness within self may serve the same function. an inner anchor, a center. Without it, endless motion risks fragmentation. This idea becomes deeply personal. For perhaps the first time in his existence, Hermes begins cultivating inner stillness deliberately. Not long meditations like philosophers, not rigid discipline like Apollo. Something more fitting to his nature. Moments of pause, observation without immediate action, breathing before movement, listening without response. Tiny acts, yet transformative. Ancient mystical traditions later associated Hermes with contemplative wisdom, partly because of this duality, quick intelligence balanced by reflective awareness. He becomes not merely fast, but centered. Still, Hermes carries shadow too. Anything sacred can be violated. One infamous event shakes Greece deeply when Hermes in a major city are vandalized overnight. Faces broken, stone damaged, sacred markers defaced. Fear spreads instantly. Ancient people did not treat such acts as simple vandalism. This felt like symbolic assault on protection, trust, and civic order itself. Hermes witnesses public panic. Travelers hesitate, rumors explode, accusations multiply. Political suspicion rises. The event fascinates and saddens him because it reveals how much people depend on symbols. Break the symbol, and collective anxiety surges. This teaches another truth. Civilization rests not only on roads and trade, but shared belief. Markers matter because meaning matters. Hermes now understands his legacy more clearly. He is no longer merely individual deity performing tasks. He has become structure, an invisible architecture connecting movement, trust, interpretation, and transition. That scale humbles him. One twilight he stands beside an old Herm, weathered by decades of wind and rain. Moss grows along the base. Offerings lie scattered coins, flowers broken ribbon, breadcrumbs from birds. The stone face resembles him, and does not. It is simplified, still, silent, yet somehow true. He touches the cold surface. For a strange moment he feels peace, not because the stone captures him perfectly, because it captures something essential, presence. Hermes finally understands the paradox. He does not need to move constantly to remain present. Presence can endure even in absence. A traveler touching stone still feels guided. That realization softens an old wound. Perhaps belonging does not require permanent physical presence. Perhaps meaning can remain even when one departs. As dusk deepens, torches flicker along distant roads. A breeze carries pine and smoke through cooling air. Then a peculiar omen appears. For a heartbeat, every Herm across Greece seems connected by faint threads of silver light. Road to road, city to village, harbour to mountain, threshold to threshold. A vast web. Hermes stands at its centre, not as ruler, as connector. The vision fades, but its meaning remains. His influence now extends beyond physical journeys. Roads and markers are only outer symbols. The deeper crossings lie elsewhere, in thought, in language, in meaning itself. And soon Hermes' legacy will evolve again from god of roads and thresholds to something even more abstract, enduring, and mysterious. He will become a symbol of the human mind, trying to interpret reality itself. As the centuries move forward, something subtle yet extraordinary begins happening in how mortals understand Hermes. Farmers still pray to him before travel. Merchants still invoke him over scales and contracts. Sailors still touch roadside Hermes before departing for sea. But philosophers, priests, scribes, and seekers begin seeing something deeper in him. They start asking a new question, not what roads Hermes protects, but what kind of intelligence he represents. You stand beside him in a quiet temple library at night. Oil lamps burn low. Wax drips slowly down bronze holders. Scrolls rest on cedar shelves. The air smells of papyrus dust, olive oil, and old wood. Outside, distant waves break against harbour stone. Inside, a scholar traces symbols with careful fingers, whispering interpretations to himself. Hermes watches in silence, and for perhaps the first time, he sees his domain expanding beyond roads of earth into roads of thought. This transformation feels natural once you notice it. What is thought if not movement? An idea begins somewhere obscure. It travels through memory language, emotion association, and interpretation before arriving as speech or action. Meaning itself moves. Understanding crosses thresholds. Confusion becomes clarity, or clarity becomes confusion. Hermes recognizes the pattern instantly. The mind contains crossroads. Ancient thinkers increasingly sense this. Language, persuasion, interpretation. Rhetoric, diplomacy, negotiation, translation. These all belonged naturally to Hermes. Over time, his symbolism deepened. He became associated not merely with speech, but with interpretation of speech. Not merely communication, but meaning. This is profound. Messages do not matter if they cannot be understood. Hermes begins spending more time near philosophers, poets, scribes, and temple interpreters. Unlike warriors or merchants, these mortals wrestle with invisible movement. Ideas, symbols, metaphors, contradictions. Hermes feels strangely at home. One philosopher sits beneath lamplight arguing with students about truth. His voice rises and falls with conviction. What is truth, he asks? A fact, a perception, a useful story. The students debate. Hermes listens fascinated, because he has lived this tension for ages. As messenger, he has seen truth delivered clearly and still misunderstood. He has seen lies believed because they fit desire. He has seen silence communicate more than speech. He has seen symbols move hearts where logic failed. Truth he knows rarely travels untouched. Interpretation shapes reality. This realization becomes central to later understandings of Hermes. Some traditions, especially mystical and philosophical ones, began linking his name to Hermenia, interpretation, explanation, translation of meaning. Modern scholars still debate the exact linguistic relationship, but symbolically, the connection feels almost inevitable. Hermes becomes patron of interpretation. That role carries immense weight, because interpretation creates power. Who explains meaning influences civilization. Priests interpreting omens, judges interpreting laws, teachers interpreting texts, diplomats interpreting intentions, lovers interpreting silence. Hermes sees the same structure everywhere. Meaning never arrives pure. Someone always mediates, and mediation changes outcome. This insight humbles him. It also frightens him, because he understands better than anyone how easily interpretation becomes manipulation. One evening, a priest receives an ambiguous omen from sacrificial smoke. The pattern could suggest warning or blessing depending on reading. Citizens wait anxiously for guidance. Hermes watches. The priest hesitates. His interpretation will influence military decisions. Lives may depend on nuance. The moment feels familiar. Another threshold, not road, meaning. The priest closes his eyes, breathes, and speaks cautiously. He does not claim certainty. He acknowledges ambiguity. Hermes feels quiet admiration. This matters. Wisdom is not always decisive confidence. Sometimes wisdom is honest uncertainty. Ancient philosophers increasingly valued this distinction. To interpret responsibly requires humility. Certainty can comfort, but false certainty misleads catastrophically. Hermes absorbs this deeply. It mirrors his own growth. The infant thief loved clever victory. The mature Hermes respects ambiguity. He no longer worships certainty. He respects complexity. This changes how he sees himself. For ages he feared being between things, as though betweenness implied incompleteness. Now he recognizes something different. Meaning itself often lives between extremes, not rigidly here or there. Between. Interpretation is threshold work, exactly his domain. This realization creates profound inner alignment. At last his identity feels coherent across all roles. Messenger, guide, mediator, trader, psychopomp, interpreter. All are forms of translation. He moves beings, words, values, souls, and meaning across boundaries. The underlying pattern has always been one thing: transformation through passage. Athena notices this intellectual shift before most gods. One afternoon, they walk together through a temple courtyard where students debate beneath fig trees. Chalk dust clings to stone tablets. Bees hum around flowers in warm air. Athena speaks first. "You look pleased." Hermes smiles. I finally understand my pattern. Athena raises an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. Hermes laughs softly, then answers seriously. I thought I governed movement. A pause. I govern transformation. Athena stops walking. The statement hangs between them. Then she nods. Yes, nothing more. No elaborate praise. Just recognition. For Hermes, the moment feels deeply important. Athena, goddess of structured wisdom, confirms what he has slowly discovered through experience. His essence is not speed. Speed is tool. Transformation is essence. This understanding reshapes his legacy. Soon, philosophers begin invoking Hermes symbolically when discussing communication between mortal and divine understanding. Poets invoke him before composing layered verse. Orators pray for persuasive speech. Scribes whisper his name before copying sacred texts, hoping meaning survives transmission. Hermes watches with quiet awe. His worship has evolved far beyond cattle theft and roadside shrines. He now inhabits cognition itself. Yet, with this elevation comes a familiar shadow, misinterpretation. The more abstract his symbolism becomes, the easier distortion becomes. Some speakers invoke Hermes to justify manipulation. Sophists twist rhetoric for advantage. Clever liars disguise falsehood as eloquence. Argument becomes weapon. Hermes recognizes the danger instantly. Intelligence without integrity corrupts meaning. This troubles him deeply because it reflects his oldest shadow. Trickery. Has his own nature enabled misuse? The question hurts. One night beneath star-filled sky, Hermes stands alone outside a scholarly city. Crickets sing in dry grass. Warm wind moves through olive branches. In the distance, debate still echoes from a symposium. He thinks about everything he has become. Guide of souls, patron of trade, protector of roads, symbol of interpretation. And still, shadow follows. Every gift contains risk. Every tool can wound. This truth no longer depresses him as it once might have. Instead, he accepts it, because maturity has taught him something essential. Purity is illusion. Wisdom lies not in eliminating ambiguity. Wisdom lies in navigating ambiguity responsibly. This may be his greatest lesson, not only for gods, for humanity. Ancient traditions often remembered Hermes precisely because he reflects the human condition. Humans constantly interpret incomplete information. They navigate uncertainty using language instinct, trust memory, and hope. They live as threshold beings, just like him. Then an omen appears. A scroll left open by wind flips rapidly through its pages. Page after page after page, until it stops. One line exposed in lamplight, a single phrase, unread by any mortal nearby. Hermes sees it and understands. No words are spoken aloud, yet the message feels clear. Even when temples fade, meaning travels, the thought sends quiet stillness through him, because he senses what comes next. Ages change, empires rise, religions shift, old gods lose public worship. The age of myth will not remain forever. Soon, Hermes must face his strangest transformation yet. What happens to a god of movement when the world itself moves beyond belief in him? Will he vanish or evolve once more? Time moves strangely for gods. For mortals, generations feel long. For immortals, centuries can pass like seasons changing across familiar hills. Yet even gods feel the weight of transformation when entire civilizations begin shifting beneath them. By now, Hermes has watched countless roads appear and vanish. He has seen villages become cities, cities become empires, empires fracture into ruins. He has heard prayers whispered in dialects later forgotten. He has stood beside shrines now buried under dust. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first another great transition begins. The old ways start fading. You stand with Hermes on a hillside, overlooking a once busy sanctuary. Evening light falls across cracked stone. Weeds grow between temple steps. The scent of wild grass has replaced heavy incense. No fresh oil burns in the lamps. No merchant arrives with offerings. No shepherd leaves honey at the altar. Silence has settled where worship once lived. For many gods, this would feel like death. For Hermes, it feels like a question. What happens when belief changes? The first signs appear gradually. New philosophies spread. Rational inquiry deepens. Political powers shift. Foreign influences arrive. Old rituals become less central in some places, transformed or abandoned in others. Then later, larger spiritual revolutions reshape the Mediterranean world. Temples close, priests disappear, sacred practices that endured for centuries lose public power. Hermes watches. No panic, no thunder, just observation, because change has always been his domain. Still, even he feels the ache. Ancient worship was never merely theology, it was relationship, the touch of a traveller's hand on stone, a whispered prayer before departure, oil poured at crossroads, a sailor asking safe return. These intimate gestures fade, and with them comes grief. Not grief for lost power, something subtler, grief for broken continuity. One evening, Hermes walks through an abandoned market road where a herm lies toppled. Moss covers its face. Rainwater pools in cracked stone. Once thousands passed here daily. Now only wind moves through empty stalls. He kneels, touches the weathered stone. Cold, rough, forgotten. For a rare moment sorrow rises unguarded. Because symbols matter, not for ego, for connection. Ancient myths often overlook what gods feel when forgotten, but psychologically the symbolism is powerful. To be forgotten is not merely to lose praise, it is to lose active participation in shared meaning. Hermes feels the absence, yet something unexpected happens. He notices movement still everywhere. Traders continue exchanging goods, messengers still carry letters, negotiators still interpret meaning, travelers still fear getting lost, lovers still misread each other, judges still weigh language, children still ask questions, roads remain. Thresholds remain, interpretation remains, the forms changed, the function survived. This realization stirs something profound. Hermes begins understanding that myth may fade while archetype endures. Ancient names disappear, underlying patterns persist. This becomes the key to his survival. Some later traditions absorb fragments of him into new symbolic frameworks. Scholars, mystics, alchemists, and esoteric thinkers begin linking Hermes with wisdom figures across cultures. Most famous among these is Hermes Trismegistus, a mysterious fusion of Greek and Egyptian thought. Hermes studies this development with fascination. His name changes. His symbolism expands. He becomes associated with hidden knowledge, sacred texts, cosmic correspondence, mystical philosophy, not identical to old Olympus, not entirely separate either. Transformation again. Some historians believe these later traditions reveal how adaptable Hermes remained in cultural memory. Unlike gods bound tightly to one ritual structure, Hermes thrives through reinterpretation. That feels deeply fitting. A god of translation survives by being translated. He smiles at the irony. The world may no longer leave olives at roadside Hermes, but thinkers still invoke his spirit when exploring meaning between world's matter and spirit language and truth symbol and reality. He endures, not unchanged, but alive. One night, Hermes visits a library where scholars preserve ancient scrolls. Candlelight trembles across shelves packed with texts. Dust floats through warm air. A young student studies old myths, tracing faded Greek letters with careful fingers. He pauses over Hermes' stories, smiles, writes notes, asks questions. Hermes stands unseen nearby. The boy does not pray. He does not worship. Yet he engages. Curiosity bridges centuries. Hermes feels something unexpected. Joy. Because remembrance takes many forms. Worship is one. Study is another. Storytelling is another. Interpretation itself becomes offering. This realization dissolves much of his sorrow. He no longer defines survival through unchanged ritual. Meaning survives through transmission. Again and again his central truth returns. Movement, passage, transformation. Even memory works this way. A story passes from priest to poet, poet to scholar, scholar to teacher, teacher to listener, changed slightly each time, alive because moving. dead only when stagnant. This insight brings deep peace. Yet one final shadow remains. Modern minds often reduce myth to fiction. Entertainment, symbol, allegory, not living reality. Does that diminish Hermes? He considers the question carefully, then rejects its sadness, because myth was never only about literal belief. Myth organizes meaning. It gives shape to psychological truths too large for plain language. Hermes understands now that whether humans call him god, archetype, symbol, or story matters less than one thing. Do they still encounter thresholds? Yes. Do they still navigate uncertainty? Yes. Do they still need guidance through transition? Always. Then Hermes remains relevant. His form may evolve. His necessity does not. One winter evening, he walks unseen through a crowded modern city. Lamps no longer burn oil. Roads glow with artificial light. Metal vehicles rush like mechanized chariots. Screens flash messages faster than ancient messengers could imagine. Hermes stops and laughs softly. Messages everywhere, instantly crossing continents. Trade flowing globally. Information moving at impossible speed. Interpretation more necessary than ever. The modern world, in many ways, feels astonishingly hermetic. Speed multiplied, connection expanded, confusion intensified, truth contested, meaning negotiated, thresholds everywhere. Physical roads became digital roads. Still roads, still crossings, still risk, still transformation. Hermes sees people staring at glowing screens, receiving words capable of changing lives in seconds. Love, grief, news, lies opportunity, betrayal. He understands instantly. His domain never vanished. It scaled. This revelation feels almost playful. The god once defined by winged sandals now watches humanity build networks faster than birds. Yet speed alone changes nothing essential. The old problem remains. Can meaning survive movement? Can truth survive transmission? Can wisdom guide interpretation? Same questions, new tools, ancient soul, modern form. At last, Hermes feels complete peace with cultural change. He no longer fears fading temples. He understands. Gods of rigid structures may vanish when structures collapse. Gods of transformation survive transformation. That is his final evolutionary advantage. He cannot become obsolete while change exists. Then one night beneath a vast star-filled sky far removed from any single era, Hermes receives a final omen. A road appears. Not stone, not earth, not light, something beyond all categories. A road stretching through memory itself. On that road walk countless figures, ancient merchants, Greek sailors, Roman scribes, medieval scholars, modern travelers, children yet unborn, all moving, all crossing, all searching. Hermes watches them and understands. One final section of his life remains. Not action, not duty, reflection, the meaning of everything he became, and why humanity, after all these ages, still remembers the god who never stopped moving. Night has deepened. The roads of the world grow quieter now. Harbour fires burn low. Market voices fade into memory. Even the wind seems gentler, as though the earth itself is preparing for rest. You stand beside Hermes at the edge of a place that feels impossible to name. It is not quite Olympus, not quite earth, not quite dream. It feels instead like every threshold at once. The space between departure and arrival, between question and understanding, between memory and forgetting. The air is cool and carries faint traces of everything Hermes has ever known. Pine from Mount Silene, salt from harbour winds, olive smoke from village shrines, incense from marble temples, dust from long roads, and the dry silence of the underworld. All his worlds meet here. For a long time, neither of you speaks. There is no urgency now, only reflection. When you look back across Hermes' life, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. He was never the strongest god, never the most feared, never the most worshipped in grand spectacle. He did not command storms like Zeus. He did not shine with the radiant certainty of Apollo. He did not inspire desire like Aphrodite. He did not rule death like Hades. And yet, he endured. Why? Because Hermes embodied something more universal than power. Transition. Every life is built from transitions. Birth into childhood, childhood into adulthood, certainty into confusion, love into loss, ignorance into understanding, life into death. Most human suffering does not come from stillness alone. It comes from crossing thresholds without knowing what waits on the other side. That is where Hermes lives. Not at beginnings alone, not at endings alone, in between. That is why humanity never truly stopped needing him. The infant thief who stole cattle now feels impossibly distant. Yet that first act already contained the seed of everything he would become. Even then he challenged fixed assumptions. Even then he moved value across boundaries. Even then he revealed that cleverness could reshape power. But age transformed cleverness into wisdom. That arc matters. Hermes began as mischief. He matured into responsibility, then compassion, then understanding, then peace. The transformation was gradual, shaped by relationships. Maya gave him origin and quiet truth. She saw the child beneath the god and the fear beneath the movement. Her cave remained his oldest anchor, the one place where identity required no performance. Apollo gave him opposition, then respect. Through rivalry, Hermes learned rhythm discipline and the strange harmony created by difference. Their bond taught him that intelligence need not always compete. Sometimes contrast creates music. Aphrodite gave him vulnerability. Love forced stillness. Stillness forced honesty. Through her, Hermes confronted the fear he hid beneath motion, the fear that attachment makes loss inevitable. Pan and his children gave him mirrors. Through them he saw instinct, wildness, ambiguity, inheritance, and the uncomfortable truth that every gift carries shadow. Mortals gave him perhaps the deepest education of all. Travelers taught him fear of uncertainty. Merchants taught him trust and risk. Heroes taught him courage under impossible pressure. The dead taught him tenderness. And this may be the most beautiful irony of his life. The immortal god learned wisdom from mortal fragility. Ancient myth often placed gods above humans, but Hermes repeatedly moved in the opposite direction. The more he knew humanity, the more human complexity shaped him. Perhaps that is why he remains so psychologically alive. He feels modern, even now, because modern life is profoundly hermetic. Messages move instantly. Truth competes with falsehood. Information crosses borders at impossible speed. Trade links continents. Interpretation shapes reality. People reinvent themselves repeatedly across careers, relationships, identities, and technologies. You cross more thresholds in 1 year than many ancient villagers crossed in a lifetime. And with every transition comes the same question: how do you move forward without losing yourself? Hermes never offered simple certainty. That was never his gift. He offered something more realistic: adaptation, attention, interpretation, movement with awareness. Ancient scholars understood this in ways surprisingly relevant today. Surviving evidence suggests Hermes remained popular, not because he promised perfect safety, but because he understood uncertainty. He was never the god of guarantees. He was the god of navigation. That distinction matters. Life rarely offers guarantees. It offers roads, choices, signals, crossroads. Hermes teaches that wisdom lies not in eliminating uncertainty, but in learning how to move through it. You notice Hermes looking down now at countless roads glowing faintly across the world. Some lead to cities, some to homes, some to borders, some vanish into darkness. He speaks at last, quietly, almost like wind. They always feared getting lost. You follow his gaze. Did they? Hermes smiles. Everyone does. A pause. Then he adds, but being lost is not always failure. The words settle gently, because they feel true. Hermes of all beings knows this. Roads rarely unfold exactly as planned. Detours happen. Storms interrupt. Wrong turns reshape destinies. Yet some of the most meaningful transformations happen precisely because the expected path breaks. Hermes understands the sacred value of detours. He was born from disruption. He thrived in ambiguity. He became himself through crossing. Perhaps you do too. The final mystery surrounding Hermes is strangely simple. Did he ever stop moving? Myth offers no final death, no collapse, no grand ending, because such an ending would feel false. Hermes does not conclude like heroes. He continues. That may be the deepest reason he remains memorable. He represents continuity through change, movement without disappearance, presence within transition. A god of thresholds cannot end at a threshold. He only crosses into another form. The stars above seem brighter now. Cool night air brushes your skin. Somewhere far away, waves strike shore in slow repetition. Somewhere footsteps move along a lonely road. Somewhere someone leaves home for the first time. Somewhere someone receives life-changing news. Somewhere someone says goodbye. Somewhere someone whispers a prayer before entering uncertainty. And whether they know his name or not, Hermes is there, at the doorway, at the crossroads, at the unread message, at the unsent letter, at the hospital corridor, at the airport gate, at the border crossing, at the final breath, still guiding, still translating, still reminding you that movement itself is not the enemy. Fear without movement is the true prison. Hermes turns towards you one last time. There is no spectacle in his expression, no divine radiance demanding worship, only calm understanding, the understanding of one who has crossed every kind of road. And then you finally understand why he is remembered. Not because he conquered, not because he ruled, not because he was flawless. He is remembered because he knew something essential about being alive. You will never remain who you were. Life will move you, again and again, through joy, through grief, through confusion, through wonder, through endings you did not choose, through beginnings you never expected. And still, you go on. That is the lesson of Hermes. Keep moving, not blindly, not desperately, but attentively. Listen, interpret, adapt, carry what matters, release what must be released, and trust that even uncertain roads can lead somewhere meaningful. The night grows softer now. The roads dim. The stars remain. Hermes steps backward into quiet darkness, almost as if dissolving into the space between moments. Not gone, never gone, only moving beyond sight. And as sleep gently approaches, one final thought remains. Perhaps every life is its own sacred journey, a long crossing between worlds. And perhaps in every uncertain step, the old messenger still walks beside you, silent, patient, and smiling,